Welcome, everyone, to the Moses Lake City Council meeting Tuesday, March 14th. Thank you for your patience. We carried over just a tiny bit. It is now 6:32. Citizens who'd like to address the council must complete a blue speaker request card. You'll find it in the vestibule in the lobby there. Give it to our city clerk, Debbie Burke, here on the end. You'll be called on at the appropriate time to make your comments. Cell phones should be turned to silent mode while the meeting is in progress. If there are any students in attendance and we're not done by 9 o'clock, we'll take a short break and sign your form so you can go home. Will the city clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor Myers. Councilmember Fancher.
Present.
Councilmember Swartz.
Present.
Councilmember Madewell. Councilmember Skog.
Present.
Councilmember Eck.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Martinez. She's here, there, present. And Mayor Myers, thank you.
Present. I have asked my friend and member of the Moses Lake Scorpions cheerleader team, Carissa, to lead us in the flag salute. Thank you, Carissa. Does any council member wish to move a consent agenda item to a business item for individual discussion and vote, or make other modification for tonight's agenda? Councilmember Eck.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I would like to move item number 3 on old business. I would like to table it for 60 days to gather more research on the rate. The lessees feel that the existing city research was short-sighted, shoddy, and somewhat disingenuous. So we would like to remove it, or table it for 60 days for further discussion and then bring it back at that time. We, in my position as representing the airport. I made that as a motion, thank you.
So we just need a second to
So if
table.
there's no second, the motion.
I will second that with one exception, is I think we had some good data, and I think there's more data, and I think some people were didn't feel that they were given the full voice or the full attention. I don't think we need to act on it so quick that we can't afford 60 days to let those concerned parties actually have, something to say and feel like they weren't just short-cheated or changed. So I'd second it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Swartz.
Yeah, I would consider a slightly less long amount of time, maybe 30 days or 2 weeks.
There are some other things, Dustin, that are going on as far as the airport commission. That's why the 60 days made more sense than 30 as far as some timing on some people. That's all.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
I'm in agreement with less time. I think that the lease agreement or lease rates is based on fair market value. And so that's a specific number that doesn't really have anything to do with anything else other than fair market value. And if I understand, we're already out of compliance with RCW and so what would that do to us? Are we going to get penalized?
So can you hear me?
Well, time-wise,
Yeah, the exposure to the city is that the leases are out of compliance with the Municipal Airport Act, and the fair market value requirement may not be in compliance. So we would risk an audit finding or a potential challenge to the validity of the leases.
were we talking about making any changes that would be enacted at the first of the year at one time? That was part of the discussion? Okay. Then I guess if those rate changes wouldn't go into effect until January of next year, I guess I don't have a problem with the 60 days.
Councilmember Swartz.
Yeah, what were the additional issues that would require extra time beyond the lease rate issue?
The issues were simply to allow for a more valid research in the various municipal airports around the state of Washington, and the timing to get some of that data. It simply made sense to make it 60 days, Dustin, that was all. And if it turns out that the numbers are the numbers, the lessees at the airport are certainly willing to pay that rate. They just want to make sure that they were given a fair shot to make sure they had the numbers correct.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Darn it. Are you saying then that you don't believe that the city staff has done their due diligence in researching this? Because, I mean, the presentation that we received seemed more than adequate.
The lessees feel that proper due diligence and proper research was not done. You're right.
It seems like there's quite a bit of discussion, and I feel maybe we should talk about it at least on.
Well, I have a
I felt it
follow-up
would be
question
safer
then.
and better if we
To the
simply
city
tabled it.
staff, how much time was spent on researching the fair market value and
Deputy Mayor,
what
that's why I
airports
wanted to
were,
table it for that reason.
excuse me,
That's why I wanted to table it so we could discuss it.
so, and what airports were researched? Thank you.
To the deputy mayor's question, we put out a request to approximately 20 airports in Washington State. We had 8 responses. We had a 30-day window. I gave the initial presentation on January 24th to the city council related to staff's recommendation that you as council authorize a market rate analysis. That was presented and approved by council on January 24th. We put out the request to municipal airports that we have a list of contacts for. We had 8 responses from that inquiry. 2 of them one was removed by staff because the rate scale absolutely was not a comparable to any of the others. And then a second airport was removed at the recommendation of the airport commission because that airport was a regional commercial airport. So we had 6 comparable airports to use. 5 of them were within a very small distribution from each other, and a 6th was kind of an outlier.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
So the airport commission did have some input on this particular, on the research.
The airport commission, so after you as council approved it on January 24th, the airport commission was informed on February 9th that it was taking place, that it was underway. They then had a meeting again on February 23rd, where I informed them of the very general findings. Here's the average rates and so forth. That was the meeting in which the recommendation to remove one of the airports was made. And then their last meeting on, let's see, we're on the 14th, so that would be March 9th. I presented, here's the averages, here's a rate that staff is going to recommend to council. That recommendation will be made at the meeting Tuesday, March 14th.
So my follow-up question would then be, when you contacted these airports, was it just by email? And do you feel that if you were to do this all over again, that you would have an increase in the number that responded to you?
It was primarily by email. That's been the mode of communication in which I have got the most responses back. I did a similar request to the same, I should say I did a request to the same group of airports a few months prior, asking for their operations manuals and other guidelines. And that was, again, the mode of communication that was used. And it was not just a simply, here's one email and get back to me. I did do a follow-up. If we were to extend the period, there was one airport who said we would get back to you and didn't. But I don't know that I have a high level of confidence that we would get significantly more responses. If council chooses to delay the item, I'm happy to try and do follow-up, but I don't know that we would get more than we got.
Councilmember Swartz?
Yeah, I'd like to call for the vote on the motion on the table right now, which I believe is to table this. I think we have some other things on the agenda that maybe we can take care of, and then however we want to proceed.
I would like to do a roll call vote.
And the motion on the table is to postpone for 60 days, just to be clear.
Councilmember Eck?
Table for 60 days?
Councilmember Skog? Sorry. Councilmember Swartz?
No.
Councilmember Fancher?
No.
Councilmember Madewell?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
No.
And Mayor Myers?
No.
And so that's 4-0, the motion fails.
I would need a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have a presentation by the Airport Commission Quarterly Report, Assistant City Manager Rich Hubner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a real brief introduction this evening. The City Council approved in April of 2020 creation of a municipal airport commission, and the City of Moses Lake Municipal Code requires that the Airport Commission provide an update to the City Council on a quarterly basis for operations and ongoing activities at the airport. Does not specify too much more than we'll give an update to the City Council. So this evening, Airport Commission President Rod Richardson is here to provide that quarterly update. So I will turn the floor over to Commission President Rod Richardson.
Is this thing on?
Try it again.
Hello? Okay, that's better. Thank you, Assistant City Manager Hubner. We have lots of projects that we've discussed with at this commission. We have turf runway that we've talked about. We have perimeter fencing. We have some decorative fencing we'd like to do. The main thing has been the fueling station, and then some things that we need to do that are general housekeeping is striping the runway and the taxiways. We've had many challenges with this commission. The main challenge that we've had, I think, is communication in getting information for us to even do our jobs has been hard to come by. It's slow in our opinion, getting answers to questions and the follow-up questions that come along from those answers. Things drag out a long time. We've been getting a master's level class in how to accomplish projects with the city, with Mr. Massa from Public Works, and it's kind of all of a new way for us to think about how these things have to be done. We've tried to rely more on city staff to get us that information, but it does seem to take quite some time to get things back. One of our big challenges is there's no capital improvement money in our budget. I know there's been a bunch of discussion, and it seems like every time we get close, something new pops up. Because we're an enterprise fund and getting money transferred from the general fund to our enterprise fund is very cumbersome or potentially not possible. I don't know fully. We thought we had a path, and then on Thursday night, Assistant City Manager Hubner said that they read more and found that maybe we could not do that at all. So we're between a real rock and a hard place out there and just keeping things going because we've had to add with, I believe, the new processes that finance has put in place. Things that were never on the budget before for the airport now show on the budget. And we had this idea that the airport had been running on X amount, and now all of a sudden we've got a budget that's 4 times that amount, 5 times that amount, and we don't have the revenue to make that kind of payments. So that's been very troublesome for us. I would like to get in my input on the item 3. In the only thing that the commission has gotten has been verbal from Rich, from Assistant Manager Hubner. We haven't seen this. This was dropped on us at the very end of our meeting Thursday night. And so it's not that we don't trust the work that Rich has done, but we would like to see it. And all we've had so far has been verbal. This is what I'm doing. The airport that was dropped out, I believe, was Yakima Regional, and that was all from verbal in a meeting that Rich said this is who we've got responses from. We said, well, you can't use that. So that kind of communication, we have trouble acting on things because a lot of it is verbal and it's partial. And I think we could do better if we had that information. We are starting to get things from finance that tell us how much money we're spending. We've never had that before. But we got things, I got the February's numbers today. No opportunity to review them. You know, I'm not used to working in city codes, so I don't know what, there's money spent here, but I don't know what it was spent on. And so we're struggling with that. We wanted this commission. We had council create this commission because we thought we could really do some good at the airport. And we're all very frustrated because we don't feel like we're able to do good. Besides cutting the grass and pulling the weeds, we haven't gotten anything done out there. We've got a fueling system that we have a grant that at some point is going to start to need to be paying back. And we've had very little movement in getting that. We had an invitation for a pre-application meeting, and wrong email address were used. We didn't know it had gone out. Thursday, Tony said that went out. I'm like, we don't have this. And, it's little things, but it gets very frustrating because they keep piling up on us. So, like I said, the commission's very frustrated with the lack of progress. We're all pilots. We all love the airport and want it to be better, and we feel like we're just really having no luck in doing that. So if there's any questions, I'd love to try and answer them for you.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Actually, I think it's more a question towards Assistant City Manager to try and respond to some of your comments. Is the reason that they weren't shown in writing the potential lease rates, increased lease rates, is because we haven't voted on anything yet?
That's correct, yeah. And our responsibility as city staff is to report to you as the city council as the decision makers. So I would also very respectfully say that I was never asked for it. I would have explained why I was giving verbal reports. That was my understanding is I report to the city manager who reports to the city council. You as the city council set policy for the city. So I followed the process that is set out for our processes and procedures. Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
And then to follow up regarding your budget, the fair market value lease rates that we need to be in compliance with would then assist with your budget and what you have to spend your money.
I'm sure it would.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would. It would. There are also some concerns about the existing leases and how, even if we raise the rates January 1st, how that can be with the current leases that are in, that this may only affect new leases at the airport. There's been some discussion about that. So it would, I don't think it would make up that much based on the tenants that are out there now, and it's certainly going to reduce how many people want to be out there. The recommendation is about tripling the rate of lease out there. It does seem that this is a very interesting paradigm right now in all the other changes that are going on. So I assume that everybody, Councilman Eck has said, some of these frustrations are the same everywhere. But it's new to us, so it feels very personal, unfortunately. But yeah, we are trying to do the best that we can. We, like I said, we've had trouble moving any projects forward, and the capital budget is going to be, we'd like to get state grant money, but we don't even have money to match, the 10% to match for state grants.
I have a question, one more question, then I think other council members have comments or questions. The commission does understand that we are compelled by the RCW to charge a fair market value, though, correct?
Understood, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
we don't want to ask council to be out of compliance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fancher?
Fair market value, one of my favorite things to talk about. So I deal with that every day, and I agree. I think we can probably, I think we do owe the responsibility, and that's what I deal with, is making sure we do make a presentation. Not just an oral presentation, some sort of presentation of how we came to our numbers, definitely. You made a comment about raising it 3 times. One of the first things that I always get is, how can the assessor raise my assessment 4 times in one assessment? And the reason is, unfortunately, they only get around to do that analysis every 6 years. And you guys have watched what's happened to the market around here. And my test always for the people when they say, how can they do this, or what is my property worth, is the same thing. The assessed value is supposed to be fair and true market value. And my test is always, real quick, would you, to that person when they value their home at $300,000 and it was $100,000 before, is would you sell it for that? You know what usually they tell me? No, it's worth more than that. And so then I can't go defend them. I mean, I can't go fight that fight for them. So I do think, and when I'm coming back around, is I think we can maybe buy a little time just to make sure we make a fair presentation, to make sure that we defend our numbers with allowing your comment. Meaning, if you've got other ones that we're missing, I think that's only fair. But we do have to get to the point where we can justify it as well as you can justify it. Because I don't think we can subsidize is the big thing.
Yeah, no, I don't think we're opposed. I don't think there's ever been a market analysis done out there. From what we can determine, the rate was probably chosen because that's the rate that Grant County was using 30 years ago. And it's had some increases, but CPI has not been high the last few years and this last year, and probably next year it's going to really catch up with us. And we understand that. We just want to make sure that we really are looking at, and I've said that before, apples to apples. And even within that, we want to make sure that we're comparing species of apples to species of apples, because we have a unique situation. There are not many municipally owned, city-owned airports in the state. So the comparables are going to be a lot different, I think. So, and that's, we had discussion with Rich, and I'm not trying to throw Rich under the bus on this, and if that is the process that it has to go through council before it can be given to us in a written form, he has given us the information, and we directed, hey, that airport is really not an apples to apples comparison, but to fine tune it, we would love to have more input on that because, you know, this is a significant increase at the airport. And it's going to put a little damper on growth at the airport. And the way for us to become, you know, self-sufficient is to get all that property leased and get buildings out there, and that increases property taxes that comes into the city, and there's lots of benefits to that, but we've had trouble, and if we raise the rate 3 times what it is, we're gonna have more trouble getting people to site their buildings there. So,
Before we continue, are there any other questions on the quarterly report? Because most of this has been discussion on the lease, and I'd like to reserve that for later in the evening so we can get some of these other items handled. Is that fair? Okay. So in the sake of time, I know we've taken up 30 minutes. I'd like to move down to the Moses Lake Special Olympics cheer team recognition. Our Moses Lake Scorpions made it to a state competition. They were escorted by our police to the competition. We do have a video of the online news video that will be played. If we could pull that up real quick.
All sharing the good this morning, the Moses Lake Special Olympics cheer team won its division at the Winter Games this weekend. They received a special send-off by the Moses Lake Police Department, as you see here.
All right, the team is called the Scorpions, and not only did they win their division, they also scored the second most points in the entire competition. Go Scorpions, let's go.
Yeah, look at those smiles. They deserve it, and awesome that they are able to cheer, and then we get to cheer for them, so it's a win-win-win.
Yeah, and I don't know what's better. It's like you get ribbons, you get trophies, you get medals. That's great. But to get a police escort, the sirens going, that is the ultimate championship celebration.
That's true.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask the cheer team to come up so we can get a photo op. Maybe the newspaper wants to do something with this. They're here right now, so if you guys would come up so we can do a picture.
Get up here.
I'm just... And on behalf of the City Council, I'd like to congratulate the cheer team on their first place win at the state competition in Wenatchee the weekend of March 3rd. Congratulations one more time.
And we did send them off with the City of Moses Lake t-shirt, just especially for these types of occasions.
Next item on the mayor's report, I'd like to recognize Parks, Recreation, Cultural Services Advisory Board member Greg Neverez. I don't see him in the audience, but he did serve for 4.5 years. Again, it's a volunteer position, oftentimes thankless by the community, but they do help advise us on different parks and different programs that the city offers. So I'd like to just congratulate him on his service. And then also, we do have 2 vacant positions on that board. If anybody would like to serve, you can apply on our city website. Citizens communications. The council invites citizens' comments to hear from public on matters before the council or relevant to the council's business. The council does view free expression of all points of view as an important democratic value in this community. Each speaker is allowed a maximum of 5 minutes. If others have already expressed your views, you may simply indicate that you agree with the previous speaker. And the council expects respect for those who have positions with which one may disagree, so debate or interactive discussions are strictly prohibited. Please address your comments to the council and not staff or the audience. Council may request staff research comments received for a potential future action. And please take private conversations outside. When I call on you to speak, please begin with stating your name and city of residence for the record. And we will start with Sarah Favre. You'd like to discuss the rec center?
Good evening. My name is Sarah Favre. I'm a resident of Moses Lake. I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention, the Larson Rec Center has a kitchen that was installed. From my understanding, it was supposed to be used as like a food prep kitchen to rent out to like citizens of the community or whoever wanted to use it. But somehow along the planning process, somebody missed that it needed a food prep sink, so it's effectively unusable. The only thing you can serve out of it is prepackaged food, which severely limits like the revenue you're going to be able to generate out of that kitchen. I know that it's not a huge deal, but it's something that I feel like should have been caught in the 2+ year process that it took to build the Larson Rec Center. And I don't know if there's any plans on like rectifying that so that it can be usable, but I just figured I'd bring it up and make everyone aware.
Any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Swartz.
I guess I would just ask, is that indeed the case? Or are we aware of this issue?
So the kitchen is put in as it was specified in the plans. And so in regards to the usability of it for that purpose, I would look to Richard, Doug? Yes.
I guess I've been involved the longest with the project. Of course, it all went through the park staff at the time, and Susan especially. And my understanding is that the kitchen area was to be used mainly for like day camps and other things, and maybe some limited concessions at certain events if if they could organize to maybe sell some limited concessions out of there. It was not to be a commercial kitchen due to some of the requirements of commercial vent hooding and other things that would go along with that. So I know Susan was highly involved, and they put in what they felt they needed to run the programs that they envisioned in the future. Like I said, I know Susan was highly involved in all aspects of putting that kitchen together at the time. And we tried to get her what she asked for.
And so you can still rent the kitchen as part of?
So I guess you could rent the kitchen, but you can't, if you wanted to use it for like food prep of any sort, like not saying that you're like cooking anything there, but just food prep, like if you had a food truck or whatever, you can't use it because there's no food prep sink. Like, so if you were gonna use it, you could use it to sell prepackaged foods and that's it.
Okay. I would suggest we look into getting whatever the sink is that satisfies the requirements of the health department.
Councilmember Skog?
With Dustin. Have a friend who's in the food business, and they actually rent kitchen space in Yakima. It's where they can legally prepare food and put it on his smoker. I think Sarah brings up a good point. And I mean, that's literally, they rent the kitchen. So I think it'd be worth looking into to see if it could be expanded, the use could be expanded beyond, bag stuff. I appreciate your,
Well, and we will look into it. I don't know that it's just a simple sink issue, because if we're talking about the intention of how the kitchen was to be used, that may be different than the full-on prep, commercial kitchen support. Those are two different things. And so staff can go back and bring you options for
Yeah, maybe we
consideration.
can just look at what the cost of a sink is that's approved by the health department for use in the kitchen. I don't think it has to be much more complicated than that.
It looks like our Parks and Rec Director, Mr. Coots, would like to chime in on this.
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that, only being here for 4.5 weeks at this point, I've looked at it, and there are some things there that we can look at. I'm not going to say that a sink is going to resolve every issue with it, but it should certainly be part of our investigation and looking into what is next for that space. I would agree that as it sits right now, it's more of a kind of holding kitchen, not a prep kitchen. So we'll look at that and see what we can come back with as options.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Thank you for bringing that up to us. I do concur with Dustin and David. It's also an opportunity for us, the city, to be supportive of small business owners who might be in the
Bring
food
back some
business.
revenue too.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Swartz?
Oh, I interrupted anyway, so sorry. I had the button going and just kept talking.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much, Sarah. Next is Alicia DeLuigi. You have a few things it looks like you want to talk about.
Alicia DeLuigi, Moses Lake, for the record. First and foremost, I just wanted to personally commend you guys. I am so proud of the amazing work that you guys have done. I mean, you've had a lot on your plate all at once, and a lot of you are newer, and I'm just wowed and impressed, and I just wanted to personally commend you. So thank you, each and every one of you. I wanted to thank you also for approving the fire department's $3.3 million grant. I know that this summer you guys have some upcoming financial matters that you're going to be looking over. If you feel that that's not going to be enough of a cushion and a boost until we get our infrastructure going and revenue generated, please apprise me as soon as possible so I can see what I can do. I just wanted to give you the heads up. Our EPA is looking into putting stricter regulations with regards to the PFAS, and those are the forever chemicals in our water. And right now it's in public comment, but I'm pretty confident, given the groups that I belong to and conversations, that we need to start preparing for that. And please, 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 I feel very strongly that there's going to be grants out there for smaller communities. Please lope up on those because that's what they're there for. It's been brought to my attention that some of you are going to be going to Olympia either this week or next week. Thank you, and please have safe travels. The last thing on my agenda is evidently I don't do social media. To me, it's just garbage. It's doom scrolling. And I've got so many other things that I'm doing with my time. I just don't have time to do that. But since September, there's been on media death threats made against my family. And they recently were resurrected through a news source, whereas some people stated their intention as to why they're resurrecting it. But my family's had to deal with hundreds of death threats, or addresses being posted online. Since there's no kids in the audience, this is just one of hundreds. Oops, sorry. Sorry, hold on, let me.
there may be people listening
Yeah, I
online.
think we heard that just
Yep.
fine. You don't need to play that, thank you.
This hasn't been put in media.
10 Loring Drive. At least we know where the fuck you live, cunt. Fucking.
The explicit language, that's just one of hundreds that my family's had to endure because some people chose not to tell the full story. And at this time, I did want to bring this to your attention because I do fear for my safety and I fear for my family's safety, and I have to express my sincere disappointment, but I'm bound by confidentiality at this time. I do want to bring this to your attention, and I hope that you guys don't have to endure that as well. Thank you for your time.
Have you filed any sort of police action, police report in this regard? Thank you for your comments. Does council wish to have any business brought to a future meeting? Hearing none, we can move on to the city manager's report.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to switch up one item. I'm very pleased to have in the audience tonight Piper Peterson, our Region 10 EPA Superfund Management Division Manager. Piper, if you wanted to introduce yourself, and you may have a few folks with you, and she's out here doing a site visit in regards to our Superfund site. Sure.
Before we continue, I see an audience member is concerned about their comment, but we're going to get to it in the topic, so, yep.
Hi, good evening. Is this on? Thank you for inviting me to City Council. Nice to see you all and meet you in person, and nice to meet you, Allison, in person. I'm Piper Peterson. I've been with the Environmental Protection Agency since 1990, and this is my first time on the Moses Lake project. It's the Moses Lake Contaminated Wellfield Superfund site on the Larson Air Force Base. So I've got my team with me today. Tim, stand up. Hydro, James, Mark, and Ben are contractors, and then Tim's with the EPA with me. They come out regularly. I'll be out periodically. We're looking at contaminated groundwater on the site, seeing if there's contaminated media like soil, old landfills, that type of thing. We've conducted extensive sampling last summer and are waiting for the report next week to find out more details about where contamination may or may not be. Hopefully, our fingers are crossed that we're aware of all the areas and what additional work we might do next summer. We're aware of the PFAS issue that was brought up earlier, and we are sampling that. We're coordinating and working with the city and providing the data for you that once that we've received it and validated it to make sure that it's usable, and then providing metrics and standards for you guys to make decisions. And I've also offered to work with the city in a capacity of water management. I know that's really important in Eastern Washington. And I'm not allowed to do a lot outside of my Superfund box, but I've offered to have some of my staff attend your meetings. And we can support you that way. And any kind of sampling that we can do inside the Superfund site, we can do that as well. So thank you for your time and getting a chance to meet you.
We thank you, Piper. Piper's been a breath of fresh air, a new project manager. We've been having great conversations and found out she was going to be in the area, so invited her to meet all of you in this work that we have together. So thank you and team for being here. Appreciate it. Okay, the next item we have for you is the consideration of Resolution 3934. This would be a resolution in support of the Samaritan Hospital District ballot. They have a team here this evening and a short presentation for your consideration of this issue.
Good evening to the council. Thank you so much for the time to be here tonight. My name is Teresa Sullivan, and I have the privilege of serving as the CEO for Samaritan Healthcare. Obviously, we're here tonight to talk to you about our replacement hospital, and I would say our desperate need for a replacement hospital. I believe that you have maybe available to you the PowerPoint. I'm not going to go through all of the information just because of the time that we have here today, but I think I would like to highlight a few things from that PowerPoint. First of all, why do we need a new hospital? There's lots of different reasons, but I'd like to point out a couple of things. First of all, there's some stats about the number of employees and the amount of growth that we've had, but I would also like to say we are now the second largest employer in Grant County. So we have grown by over 200 employees since 2016, and we're continuing to grow. The other piece that I would point out, and I'm sure that this council is well aware of this, but when you look at the population growth of the city of Moses Lake, just the city of Moses Lake, not our hospital district, we have grown by 23.5% since 2010, or between 2010 and 2020. That is almost double the rate of the rest of the county and almost double the rate of the state. So we have grown significantly during that time. The other piece that I want to point out is our emergency department, and you're going to hear from our emergency department medical director in just a little bit. But last year, we saw over 24,000 visits to our emergency department. The last time our emergency department was expanded in the number of emergency level rooms was 1975. We have 9 rooms. So if you were to look at what the American College of Emergency Services says that we should have for the number of rooms for our size emergency department, so if we had 20,000 visits, we should have 15 rooms. If we had 30,000 visits, we should have 20 rooms. We are operating 200% above capacity. So when we started looking at the need for a new hospital, and those are the growth factors, right? But there's also, we're landlocked, the building's not easy to remodel, we only have 11 acres. When we started looking at all this and moved toward a replacement hospital, we could afford this, right, out of the operations of the hospital. And you have some graphs in your packet that show what has happened to our financials, but I would just point out a couple of things that have happened. So one, I would say the cost of the project has grown, and I think we've all seen that there's been inflation in construction and all kinds of different areas. The things that impacted the project cost are the same things that are impacting the hospital and many other businesses, and that is the cost of labor and for us, temporary manpower, and the cost of products that have inflated and the supply chain issues. So what has happened to Samaritan during this time? And one of the things that I want to point out, again, information I'm not going to go through, but in your packet you will see that there's something titled Washington State Hospitals Financials. That is a study that the Washington State Hospital Association did with 93% of the hospitals responding. And it shows you that all of the hospitals have experienced significant decreases in their financials and actually are experiencing losses, right? And I serve on a national committee as well, and it's happening across the country, not just here. So again, it's not just Samaritan, it's across the board. But when you look at our EBITDA, which is one of the graphs in there, that's our earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. What you will see is you've got a blue line there, and that's showing what our actual EBITDA has been. The orange line is showing what it would have been without one-time COVID dollars or one-time CMS settlements. So basically, since 2019 to 2022, our EBITDA has decreased $12 million, right? So that is really what's happened, is that our financial ability to support the project has declined dramatically. We can't do it, quite frankly, without financial support from the voters of our district. The other thing that you see in the packet is that we did look at a variety of different options. But the thing that I will tell you is that any one of those options besides a replacement hospital is not a long-term solution for this community. This replacement hospital lays the groundwork for what we need for the future. And if we don't do it, some of the things that I fear we will, one, we'll lose our USDA dollars. So hopefully all of you know that we received USDA dollars. 96 million of that is at 2.25% interest. We have 5 years to use it, which means we need a certificate of occupancy of the new building by September 2026, or we lose the dollars. And because we have grown as a community, we will not qualify for those dollars again in the future. So this is really an important investment for us in the future. So I'm going to pause with that and let Dr. Lockwood talk a little bit, and then I will come back and talk about what is the bond that we're looking at and what that will mean.
Thank you, Teresa. My name is Matthew Lockwood. I am an emergency medicine physician, residency trained, board certified. I have the privilege of serving as the Emergency Department Medical Director here for Samaritan Healthcare. It's a privilege to speak to you all tonight. I'm going to speak to you, there's a lot of reasons why we need a new hospital, but I'm going to speak to you specifically about the condition of the emergency department right now. We have made tremendous strides in improving patient care in the ER in recent years. Our compliance with certain measures, such as the sepsis bundle, which tracks how well we manage patients who are dying from sepsis, has increased dramatically within the last 2 years. We have decreased the wait times significantly in the last 2 years, and the length of stay, the time that patients spend in the ER, we worked very hard to decrease that as well. But there is something that we can't overcome, and that is simply that we are out of space. As CEO Sullivan said, we are operating at about 200% capacity most days. If you've been to the ER, and hopefully you haven't had to come to the ER, but if you've been to the ER lately, you know we leave a lot to be desired, not due to staffing, not due to the care we render, but due to the fact that we are simply out of physical space and on a daily basis overwhelmed with patients. Probably right now, there are probably 10 to 15 people in the waiting room. That's pretty standard for this time of day. And we won't get out of the waiting room until probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. That is because we have only 9 exam rooms. And as CEO Sullivan told you, we really need close to 20 in order to keep up with the volume that we're seeing. There is no way to expand the footprint of the ER. We are essentially landlocked. We are using hall beds, which if you've ever gone to the ER, you know it can be a very traumatic or stressful experience. It's terrible that patients have to be stuck in a hall bed where people who walk by and see and there's a lack of privacy. We don't like to use them, but we're forced to because we don't have any other place to put patients. We've had to start IV antibiotics in the waiting room after diagnosing appendicitis from the waiting room. People stuck in the chair out there because we can't get them into a bed. This is the daily challenge that we face running our emergency department. I cannot tell you, as an ER doctor who has traveled extensively across the country and worked in various ERs, from very large level 1 trauma centers to smaller emergency departments and then mid-sized departments like ours, this is by far the smallest department that we have that I've ever worked in per patient volume. We desperately need more space, and I'm here tonight to ask you for your support for the ballot measure to get us a new hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lockwood. The other area that I would just like to talk a little bit about is our surgery department, because surgery, the emergency department, they're all in the oldest part of the building. And as Dr. Lockwood mentioned, it's difficult, if not near impossible, to expand. The reason I want to point out the surgery department is we have been able to recruit some fine surgeons to this community. And some of the new surgeons are trained on robotics. But we only have 1 OR that is large enough to accommodate the Da Vinci robot. That does not work when you're trying to share that among surgeons. So I think that if we can't be able to provide them with the space and the tools that they need to be able to do their job, we'll eventually lose them, especially when they've trained on that, and if they can't use that skill, they lose that skill, right? So it's very important to us in recruiting and retaining physicians and other staff to be able to provide them the space and the tools that they need to be able to do their job. And I think even in our emergency department, you work in that day in and day out in an area that is undersized, and that wears on the staff too, right? And so being able to recruit and retain staff to that area without the space, I think we're going to struggle if we aren't able to have a new hospital. So again, what our board has put forward is they had approved a resolution in January asking the voters of our public hospital district for a $130 million bond over 30 years. It would be $1.10 approximately per $1,000 of assessed value. The reason that I want to say approximately is that there's a couple things that go into that factor, and we believe that we have estimated on the conservative side. So one of the factors that goes into that is the valuation of the district and the growth rate of that valuation of the district. I believe it is that over the last 10 years that has grown by 4% or 4.5%. We used 1%. So if the growth rate is higher than 1%, that means the $1.10 is going to come down. The other factor that is in that is an interest rate. And we also believe that we estimated the interest rate on a conservative side. So we think that could possibly be less than that. I do know one of the questions I was asked is, well, what would that mean for a $250,000 home? And that would be $275 a year. I divided that out by 52 weeks, and it's about the cost of a cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? And if you had to take one trip out of town for care, $275 is going to be gone fast. So we are looking at a special election, which would be held on April 25th. Ballots would go out right around April 7th or somewhere in that time frame. Are there questions, or are there things from the PowerPoint that you saw that I did not answer?
How conservatively did you estimate the interest rate?
I think pretty conservatively, but I would say that what I think is the most conservative is the growth rate. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Thank you. I have a few questions, and some of them were brought to me from community members. So as my job as city council, I appreciate that people come to me and hope to get some answers. So I think in here you identified the hospital district as Moses Lake and Warden. Is that correct?
Yes. So if in the packet you has a picture of it. I'm sorry, it's probably kind of small. But essentially the district goes to the east to the Grant Adams County line, to the south roughly to the Grant County Adams line. And then if you go to the west, it is just shy of Dodson Road and north to Rocky Ford. So it is, obviously bigger than the city. Yep.
Sure. But the two cities residing in the hospital district are Moses Lake and Warden.
Yes.
And Warden being a pretty low socioeconomic community. Have you done any studies to see how frequently you assist with people from Warden?
I haven't looked specifically at that. We have gone down to the Port of Warden and met with them. And we have another meeting, I believe, coming up down in Warden to talk with them as well. So, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
If you could step up with the mic.
We did a study on the patients that come into Samaritan. The majority of the patients that come from Warden do come to Samaritan. So they're a high utilizer of our facility.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I have a list.
Yep, that's okay.
And
Alex, you might want to stay nearby in case you have more information that I don't have.
Yeah, and I apologize, and I did let you know ahead of time.
Yep.
And you may have covered this in some of the community events that you had regarding the hospital, but so I understand that ER is pretty backed up. I mean, you cannot remodel out because you have that hill. Is there any option to remodel back that way of the surgery suites where PAR and, no? Okay.
No, so I guess just again, a couple of things I would say. We only have 11 acres up there. For a hospital our size, we should have a minimum of 25 acres. When you look around our lot up there, Basically, on 3 sides of it, we have steep drop-off into wetlands. And then when you go up on the other side of it, you have a nursing home, you have community health, you have grant integrated health, so there is no ability to expand that way.
So with that inability to expand on that ground floor, are there any options to expand above and relocate non-patient offices and departments, move them up above those 2 areas so that you have more space around the ER and PAR surgery?
Pretty tough. The areas of the building down there were built back in like the 50s, 40s, 50s, and they're built with what's called shear walls. So we had engineers come in and look at this, again, when we were evaluating it. Any option to try to expand on that location, and this goes back to 2017, is over $100 million. And you're going to get done, and we're going to still be landlocked, and we're going to have spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a building that can't serve us for the future.
Are your ER wait times any longer than any other facilities of the similar size? I understand you're very, we don't want patients in the hallway. I'm a registered nurse. I totally get that. But are they any longer than any other facility of comparable size? Yeah, sorry.
So the answer to that question is yes and no. We've made some improvements in decreasing our wait time, certainly, there are other hospitals our size that can get patients in a lot faster because they simply have the physical space to put patients in rooms faster. Once I get them in rooms, I can get labs, I can get x-rays, I can, meet with them and perform an exam in a private setting. But the answer to that question is we could certainly be a whole lot better if we just had more space. So yeah, the answer, sorry, it's a long answer to a short question, but we're doing okay as far as wait times, but we could do better.
Can I just add, sorry you didn't ask this question, but when he talked about sepsis, we are above the national average in the sepsis compliance.
Have you thought about standalone ER like Trios in Tri-Cities area?
We have, but again, emergency department is not our only issue. We have issues with surgery. We have other issues in the building that won't help us fix. I think the other concern that we have is that if we have to, because we would still have to have the emergency department at the Wheeler if we did a standalone. And so now we're creating a situation where we have inefficiencies with staffing, we have inefficiencies with trying to transport stuff back and forth. So while we've looked at that, we don't really feel, again, like that's the best option for us going forward.
I think my final question.
Yeah.
And it's a good segue because you talked about staffing. So as I understand it, you have a med-surg floor wing that's closed because you don't have staffing. And I understand that some of the departments have been pared down, which is affecting patient care or the timing. And so my concern, people that have come to me, is we can build this wonderful new facility, but what's going on with the staffing, especially when your last report was that you spent over $7.3 million, I think, over budget for travelers. So my big concern is, spending all that money on a new building and still not being able to take care of the community because you don't have the staffing. You'd have quicker ER times, you'd have, state-of-the-art technology for surgery, but some of those procedures, surgeries would mean that they need to stay, or the ER patients need to be admitted, but you don't have staffing.
Yeah. So 2 things. We don't have a wing closed because we haven't closed down a wing. So we have not closed down a wing due to staffing. And I'm not sure, and I guess, Alex, if you can think of anything, I'm not sure where staffing has been pared down. Now, have we tried to work to be more efficient? Yes, we have, and to make sure that we're doing all of those things efficiently, but we haven't closed a wing. But if our census is not as high at times, say on the med-surg unit, well, we're going to bring staffing down because we're going to adjust to volume, right? And I think that that is us being prudent with the resources that we have to be able to staff to those volumes. As far as what are we doing? Well, one, I would say we're not alone in this. We all are having staffing issues within healthcare, but within a lot of industries. So a couple of things that we are working hard on. One is that we work a lot with Big Bend Community College around nursing, and we've had a lot of success with that, and we've developed a number of different programs to help us be able to recruit nurses from that program. But we're also reaching out beyond that. So just one example, there's other examples, but we are also working with WSU. And so, for instance, WSU had contacted us a few weeks back and said that there were some nurses that had thought they were going to retire, decided not to retire and come back to the workforce. Could they come and do some clinicals to help them be able to get their license back and be able to practice nursing? So we're working with them to do that. We're also working with their School of Pharmacy. And the other thing that I think is really exciting is that we are working with their School of Medicine and have been for a while. So we take their students. Their program is a little bit different than a lot of other medical schools where they don't have an academic medical center, but their students do their training in other hospitals. So we have, eventually, we'll have some of their first-year students here, second-year students, and in their third year, those students would actually spend probably 9 months out of the year here, and then the fourth year some time as well. They would also eventually like to see us develop a residency here. So I think we have some great opportunities with that. We're also looking at other options, you know, I would say international options for staffing. We also have the area health education coordinators that are helping to interest more students in healthcare careers. So again, I think misery loves company. We're not alone in the challenge, but we are doing a lot of things that I think are going to help us to be able to get there.
So I'll follow up to that, Teresa, sorry.
That's okay.
Are you currently having to transfer patients out because you don't have staffing?
I am not aware, I'm going to ask, I'm not aware of any, to be blunt. Not from the
What's that?
emergency room. I will say in the past, and so this is one of the things that I would like to stress, when I started in this role 7 years ago, I would often hear, and this was pre-pandemic, obviously, I would hear, we are transferring patients because we don't have a bed. I said, what do you mean we don't have a bed? We've only got 25 patients in the hospital. We're a 50-bed hospital. Well, it wasn't beds, it was staffing. And we did a lot of work to address that, and before COVID hit, we had basically eliminated transfers due to staffing, and to my knowledge, we really have not transferred. In fact, I would tell you that in many cases, we have ended up taking patients from other hospitals that haven't had beds available. And beds available being they probably didn't have staffing. Yeah. Yep.
Councilmember Madewell.
I worked at the hospital back in the 80s, so familiar with the situation that you're in. I also was a patient on a hall bed.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
No, it's not your fault, okay? You were just very, very busy. And so understand that part. And the surgery, I had fallen and broken a hip on one day, but didn't have my surgery till the next afternoon in the evening because of whatever. So familiar with what you're saying, and I understand, so good luck.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
What of the emergency room calls, or when people come there, how much of that is, I have runny nose and I just go to the ER room because I don't have a primary doctor?
There are a fair amount of those visits. Every ER sees those visits. We'd like to think that the emergency room is used for emergencies only. But the reality is, you have single parents who have to work all day. They can't take time off from work to take their child to a clinic when they're sick. So the ER after 7 p.m. is the only place they can take somebody who's ill. We're proud to kind of be the safety net in terms of healthcare for the entire country. ERs are, but especially this community. So we have a pretty healthy mix of ill but non-emergently ill patients. And then, of course, we have our traumas and our very sick patients as well.
Could any space up at the healthcare on top of Pioneer alleviate any of that if there was a couple rooms open for the runny nose ER room?
Well, I would have to defer to our team on that one. I'm not sure, again, we can't keep it open all night on Pioneer. That's the issue, right?
Cannot?
Yeah. No, I don't think it would be good. I don't think it would be feasible or cost effective to kind of run an all-night clinic for all-night urgent care, basically. I've never really heard of that before, like an urgent care type setting where it's a 24/7 type facility. So I doubt that would be something that would be feasible or cost effective.
And Dr. Lockwood, would you say we've also seen really the acuity of our patients grow?
Yeah.
And a lot of behavioral.
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing too. We take care of a lot of other things than what people think of when they think about the ER. We perform sexual assault nurse exams on patients who've been sexually assaulted. We facilitate psychiatric evaluation and treatment in the department, and those patients do take up a large portion of our care time. And yes, Teresa's correct. We've had a significant change in the type of patients we're seeing over the last year and a half. They are coming in much more sick than they used to. And part of that's because of lack of access to primary care. Part of that's because of financial issues. There's a whole slew of reasons why that's happening. But it is not uncommon for me to have, be managing 4 or 5 very ill patients all at once, and then a smattering of, earaches, sore throats, coughs, and things like that.
What would be the potential disposition of the existing hospital? Would somebody else buy it and compete?
No, it cannot be another hospital. Washington is a certificate of need state. And so right now, it could not be a hospital. We couldn't even operate it as a hospital. So what would happen with it? I know some people think that hospital would be worth a lot of money, and if you would sell that hospital, one person said, well, I think you'd maybe get $50 million for it. We wouldn't. We did have it valued back in 2018, I think it was, and it was a few $1 million.
Could it be used for homeless people?
Maybe. I mean, I guess I don't know that I could answer that question for sure. I mean.
We were just talking about a homeless thing.
Yeah.
Tonight, and space and shelter and, well, if there's okay, that's
Yeah.
another discussion.
I guess it would depend on the needs and the requirements and all of those kinds of things, which I don't feel like I would be able to answer.
But it would not be a hospital anymore.
Yeah, it would not be a hospital anymore.
To clarify, though, the facility could be used for some other healthcare purpose, is that correct?
It probably could be used
Drug
for
and
some other
alcohol
healthcare
rehabilitation?
purpose. Like a
Drug and alcohol rehabilitation?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with any of those, and it is possible, and I think we'd go through a process to look at what could it be used for with the community. But the one thing to keep in mind, one is it's a very large, specialized building, and some of the challenges that we have today are the same challenges that somebody else coming in would face, like sheer walls, that if you break through, what I understand from the engineers is you create potential structural integrity issues of the building. So I think it would be, the thing that people would evaluate is how much is it going to cost me to try to make this function in some other purpose.
Who would actually own that facility?
Well, we still, the hospital district would still own it at this particular point. So whatever unless we sold it, but yes, we would still own it.
Any other questions, comments from the council? Thank you for the presentation. I do
Thank you
have
very much.
Allison Russell, if you'd like to make your comment.
Hi, and thank you for having us. I'm Shara Anderson, born and raised here in Moses Lake, actually at Samaritan Hospital, and I have been a part of Friends of Healthcare, which is a new group, but I have been a part of this hospital since the first original thought of it, I think in 2017. So I am the co-host of Friends of Healthcare, so I'm going to introduce, she's going to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Allison Russell. I'm also a longtime resident of Moses Lake. I was the one that was super excited about my comment. You can tell we're new here and a little casual. I just wanted to say that Shara and I both have been volunteer co-chairs of community relations at the hospital for the last 6 years, and also have the honor now of being the president of healthcare, Friends of Healthcare rather. And we've been doing a lot of work out in the community the last couple of weeks, getting people together, getting in front of them, answering questions, much like the questions you guys are asking us, along with Teresa and Alex, Dr. Lockwood. And I just want to say that this hospital is really important to me. I have 2 little boys that I had both of them at Samaritan. I'm raising them here in this community, and I have aging parents in this community, lots of them. I'm very fortunate I have 6 sets of parents. There's 3, it's 6 total. So, but what I want to say is that's really important to me. So a couple years ago when my dad fell really ill, we were spending a lot of time on the road, and that's hard when you have a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. And so I just really want to see healthcare here in my hometown available for the community members that I love, people that I enjoy, and I want to watch this community thrive. And I want that right here, just minutes from my doorstep and not hours away. So I would just really like to encourage you to vote yes, along with Shara and I and all other community members. We would just really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. There is staff would like a motion to adopt Resolution 3934, if the council so pleases.
I so move to adopt Resolution 39.
Before we start, due to the issue and the public resolution, we do need to provide an opportunity for anyone from the public to speak, either for or against the resolution.
Sorry. Oh, state law requires equal opportunity of time for council to discuss for public comment. Is there any other citizens that would like to comment on the matter? Anybody online? Hearing none, now we can accept a motion, sorry.
I don't know if I'm going to do it now. I so move to adopt Resolution 3934 as presented so eloquently. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you again for the presentation.
We were due for a long meeting. So thank you. So our next item, in your packet, you had our year-end 2022 financial report. We reviewed it with the Finance Committee this afternoon. Our Finance Director, Madeline Prentice, has some highlights for you, and we can take any questions.
Good evening. So for the 2022 year end, we have rolled those numbers up. Of course, not final until the audit is finished. And so the year end, we actually came in pretty good this year. Revenues are up 9.3% overall on a citywide perspective. And that is due largely to general fund sales tax increases of 2.6 million. And public safety sales tax as well came in very strong this year. The other funds also are all up for revenues for the year, for the 2022 year. A lot of it is due to budget conservation that we did, or conservatively budgeting for 2022, as well as the unknowns that we had coming out of COVID. As far as expenses, we were under budget citywide on the expenses by 9.8% or 9.7 million. A lot of that is due to timing as well as unfilled positions, employee positions that remain through the end of the year as well. And timing variances for capital expenditures, so.
Any questions?
Councilmember Eck.
Yes. Madeline, do we know what % of the increase came from our real estate taxes? Our share of the taxes?
I don't have that information for you, but I can definitely get that for you.
I think it would be good to know that.
Okay.
We're not going to have a lot of increases in the future. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you for that report. Is that it for the city manager's report?
That is it for the city manager's report, yes.
Moving on to the consent agenda, all items listed are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. On to old business, the DOH Associates Police Station Owners Rep Contract presented by Allison Williams, our city manager.
Thank you. At the regular meeting on February 14th, we considered a contract with the DOH Associates to continue as the owner's representative for the police station construction. We have successfully used DOH Associates with the Larson Recreation Center. In that case, they came on board during the bidding process. The project at that point had already been designed and documents prepared. And so they were able to be on board during the bidding process and then construction management and oversight. From the city staff perspective, building projects like this, you do have the contractor and the architect. However, it does require a city staff person to be available, and that day-to-day work is really critical in terms of the overall management of the project, management of change orders, quick decisions that need to be made. And in my professional recommendation, handling a project like this without a representative to be an advocate for the city does not fairly represent the taxpayers in these projects. And for the Larson Recreation Center project, we achieved cost savings in some of the change order negotiations that actually covered the cost of the owner's rep. And I actually would consider that we would need a full-time staff person to do this oversight and management. And so the cost estimate that is in your packet, this time we provided a detailed cost estimate. It represents an estimate of time that they viewed as a maximum time, 2,900 hours over the course of the several years of the project. And this anticipated bringing them in during schematic design, through design development, construction documents, bidding, construction administration, and closeout. And they also have several of the special inspections that are required for a project like this within their contract. And so, again, staff is here recommending the employment of the DOH Associates for the police station project. I thank you two for your patience. We have Larry Gangle and Paul Kopic here representing the DOH Associates. So if council has specific questions of them, they have managed a number of public projects. They know Eastern Washington and the climate very well, and have managed a variety of projects in this manner. And I would also look to our staff. I'm looking to Richard in particular, and we discussed this in Finance Committee today. Either engineering or facilities management would be the department that would be required to provide oversight for this. And We had direction earlier in the year from City Council that you wanted to make sure that when staff was in need of additional assistance, that we were clear that help was needed. And so, again, advocating for this addition. And Richard, anything you would like to add?
So we've been in an, I guess, a fortunate but interesting situation here where these construction projects, typical of the Larson Rec Center, when we built this building, when the new police building, they don't happen all that often. You know, we started the Larson Rec Center project initially, it's been 4 years, 5 years, when we first started looking at this. So they take time, and they don't happen all that often. And to have the expertise, to be able to have somebody like Larry, who speaks architect and speaks building construction, is an expertise that we don't have. And in all honesty, we would not be able to keep somebody in that. There's not enough of these projects to really justify having somebody on full-time. During the Larson Rec Center construction project, I dealt with Larry, was invaluable because I could talk to him about when they brought up change orders, when they brought up issues, things that I was not familiar with, that I could talk to Larry and he could give me his expertise. He's seen those situations in the past and construction methods and materials and all those types of things. So it is invaluable to have that expertise when you're looking to make a $15 million investment in a building. So I would highly support this contract.
Any questions or comments from the council? Councilmember Skog?
I fully agree with your comment about not having the expertise. I mean, wait a minute, that's not a derogatory thing, but it's just a reality. Okay. Looking at, having somebody help to oversee that as a representative or with our interest, as their core interest is important. The question I have is, as a percent of sales, if you will, that request was $368,000?
389.
389, okay. And as a percent of $15 million.
You want me to do the math real quick?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll pull out a calculator, just a second.
Well, anyway, how does that compare to the percent of the project at the Larson Rec Center?
I don't have those numbers in front of me. We could pull numbers on how much we spent with DOH Associates and take a total cost of the, we ended up.
Larry has that information if we wanted to. Mr. Gangle, I should say.
300, okay.
Hi, I'm Larry Gangle with the DOH Associates, a principal in the firm. And the number of hours that we had on the Larson Rec Center was 2,500 hours. And our total contract with the special inspection was around 272,000. So comparative, that was an $8.9 million job versus a $15 million job. When you look at the overall hours that Allison mentioned of 2,912 hours, that works out of about 24.68 hours during the duration of per week, during the duration from schematic design through closeout of the project. And that's very similar to what we used the Larson Rec Center when we put this budget together, this proposal together to mimic what we did at Larson Rec Center, where we were there about 3 days a week and provided on-site inspections about 8 hours for 3 days a week.
And the math works out to about 2.5%.
Yeah, I did that, yeah. Well, how does,
Come back to you.
Of that 2.5%, I'm wondering, is there any, is number one, is this an all or none deal? Or is it something that can be looked at? Part of me is thinking with an existing plan that apparently has been built before, that maybe some of the bugs, some of the need for the, the scrutiny that, I know that our rec center had a lot of issues with, constructability and steel available and a lot of just supply stuff.
Yeah.
This building had some issues that were interesting, unique to this too. Is there any savings that could be achieved by, since we're doing something that's already been built, does it still take that amount of oversight?
Well, what we anticipated for the 3 phases of schematic design, design development, and construction documents, we estimated about 80 hours per each of those phases.
Would you be involved in the design development?
We would be involved in reviewing what the architect has presented to try to look at value engineering items, to look at availability of materials that are being proposed, items like that to help from lessons learned of previous projects that we've done. And that's where we kind of anticipated, so it's 240 hours of what we anticipated for that front end, which we didn't have at the Larson Rec Center.
Does the fact that it's a do-over mitigate that scrutiny at all?
I think it would for the architect.
Okay.
Not so much for the review and being up to speed with what they're trying to present and put together.
Are we doing the architect's job?
No, I don't believe so, because we would be looking at it from an outside perspective. Okay. And
yeah, well, this contract. Well, no, I think
we still have to have an architect of record, I believe.
No, but I'm just thinking if the scrutiny, if the design review, that the architect is doing that, we being DOH, being we, is that part of his, payment?
no, I think what we're doing is in alignment with what he's providing, to provide a fresh set or a different set of eyes on what he's presenting. Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
Excuse me. My name's Paul Kopic with the DOH Associates. I just kind of wanted to point out in response to your question, we do a lot of school work as well. On many of our projects, we've had what's called a clerk of the works, owner's representative, construction monitor, however you want to say it. But in schools, in certain state projects, it's actually mandated by the WACs that you have somebody that does value engineering, that you have somebody that's on site looking at things. As architects, if we're under our normal architect contract, we may have it in our contract to be there once a week. And we're there for a couple hours. We don't see what happens. You go out to a site and you see a trench open, it's full of rocks. You come back and it's full. You don't know if it got bedded, if that pipe's rubbing against rocks down there. You miss all this stuff unless you have somebody there on site watching. And that's kind of what we're proposing to do. We're going to help you through that initial design process, but then when it comes to construction, we'll be your eyes on site. I wish I could bring a big set of drawings and the book that you're going to have that has to be built from. We have people in our office, they're construction superintendents, project managers that are actually working for us right now. They go to the site, case in point, Brian came back the other day and said, Paul, the ramp's only 3 feet wide, the landing for it, and we say 5 on the drawings. 30 feet is the maximum length it could be. We had to change to put an aluminum walk-off grade in there that was 3 feet wide, and the contractor started his ramp from there. Our guy was smart enough to catch that, bring it back to me, ask the question, is this going to be okay? We can say no. The concrete gets poured correctly because we caught it in time, and the project's not delayed. There's no hassle. There's no fights. These are the types of things that we can do for you. And I've seen in projects that I've been involved with, where we did in addition, a large 6-foot piece of concrete fascia over the top that was hung from the top was not grouted in by at the bottom, and it's an earthquake restraint. At a school with kids, you get an earthquake, that starts shaking, it comes down. This is something that was, you know, I can see an architect walking through there. Oh yeah, they've got the Nelson stud in there, they've got the opening, you know, they're doing it all right, and they come back later and it's all drywalled. They didn't see the process, and those are the people that we want, that you want somebody to watch. So.
Councilmember Madewell?
I think I'm okay at the moment, thank you.
The other thing I would note for this project is for our borrowing for both the Larson Recreation Center and for this project, we're going through the state's local program. So the creation of the record, the documentation of all of the costs, the change orders, they did a fabulous job with the Larson Recreation Center, and so that record and that documentation is so critical when we are going into the state's market to support their state issuance of bonds.
I remember when the rec center was being designed, and we didn't even approve it at the time that this idea was pitched. And what I found valuable was that the idea that you guys can help us save money in the long run basically pays for the contract, or even more, so pays for that contract. So I'm in full support of what you guys do and what value it brings to the city. Council or Deputy Mayor Martinez?
Mayor Myers alluded to it, but have you seen with your other projects that you've been contracted with that every project you find cost savings and beyond just the liability? Because that alone, I mean, we've just, you know, missed a whole bunch of liability claims if something wasn't done correctly. But do you typically see cost savings in every project?
I'll let you answer that. I don't.
Are you talking about cost savings during the design?
Value
Well-
engineering.
Value engineering?
Overall.
Okay. You know, certainly there's a lot of a lot of cost savings that you can come up with. It's, I don't remember how the story goes, but you know, you look at the scale of a project, you look at the quality of it, and you look at the cost of it. And those are 3 legs of the stool, and you have to compromise on those to make something that works for you. So in value engineering, what we're really looking for is we're looking for something that's not going to hurt the quality as much, but might, you know, help the budget. Some of these things, you know, you've got nice acoustical paneling behind you, you know, something somebody might look at and say, well, that's maybe a little more money than you need. You could drop a ceiling in here, maybe do it, but it's not, it takes away from the quality of the space. And these are things that we will, you know, discuss with the architect, discuss with staff, and, you know, tell them what we're seeing and help come to that compromise. Down the road during construction, I think, you know, Larry put together a few numbers that, you know, different areas where we look, I'll let him tell you how he saved you money.
Well, some of the stuff nowadays that we've been faced with is availability of materials. And that is a real key issue to look into when designing a building. You know, we had issues with steel joists and availability and the timeframes taken to get those products. And, you know, there's alternate ways of construction using wide flange beams or different types of structure. There's insulation that is critical to a project. That I'm working on a project that they ordered the insulation a year in advance to have it ready for the job. It's a 150,000 square foot facility, but they pre-ordered a bunch of stuff in advance because they knew the time frame. So some of the stuff is just marrying up what materials are going to be used to see if it's going to be available or readily available, or if there's backlogs. I went through and just looked at a few of the items at the Larson Rec Center, and I kind of count up some 8 proposals that were given, and we reviewed and argued and put our foot down, and I have about 8 items, and it equals about $160,000 of changes from, we had one proposal that was about $122,000, and it got down to 22. So there was one big chunk right there where we, had to really kind of bow up and explain that we're not, going to put up with this. And there was other ones where $6,000 worth of proposals that we had them void because we didn't believe that they were acceptable. Some where we worked with the contractor and we had him take out some shipping costs and had him take out his overhead and profit on some things to be a little bit more palatable to be able to go through. So those are kind of some of the stuff that is just a few items that I picked up that was half of our agreement.
Yeah, thank you. So if we contracted with you, then you guys are on site and see something that, I guess, a change order, and you're not really agreeable to it. So do you have immediate authority to make the decision, or do you have to come back to city staff and say, hey, this is what we noticed, we don't recommend it, or we recommend this?
We would go back to, our liaison was Richard, and so we would have conversations with Richard and say, this looks acceptable, we recommend doing this, or we don't recommend doing this, and then he has the authority to a certain value, and then if he doesn't, then I speak with Allison, and then we would go from there. But it's usually done pretty quickly.
We met, we had, well, I guess, Zoom meetings every week with the architect and with DOH Associates to go over issues weekly on, what comes up. And yeah, they make sure that the city's informed and that the city makes the ultimate choice on, they do a lot of the arm wrestling and negotiations with the contractor. We talk about it, what makes sense, what seems reasonable or not reasonable, and then in the end, the city makes a decision to approve it or not.
Councilmember Skog?
Beating a dead horse, but I'm having a difficult time rectifying or whose roles is responsible, whether it's the architect or whether it's you. If you have somebody who's on site every day doing something that typically an architect may not be there every day, but would send a representative there to be looking over that stuff. I'd expect project managers to notice the ditch and notice the rocks, and they're already on the payroll. Do architects, it seems, do we get a discounted architectural fee for having a, in-house, if you will, inspection? Or actually, does that cost us more because he's already going to be upset because you're going to be there?
Well, typical construction administration contracts only are a small portion of the overall contract for the architect. Okay. And a lot of times, they're busy reviewing submittals of all the materials. Okay. They are reviewing the construction schedule. They're reviewing the pay apps. They're doing all of those items, and then they'll attend. I think at Larson, if I remember right, there was a weekly meeting, and he came to one a month, to where he came and did a field report. The architect did, and that was based on, I'm assuming, his agreement with the city at that point. So he is not on site. He's on site once a month. Right. So we are on there. He's reviewing the pay app. He may come to us and go, you know what, they're billing for insulation. Is it out there? We go out there and look and go, nope, only about half of it's out there. So he slashes, so he's still doing his portion. We're kind of the eyes and ears on site. We are in between him and the contractor, and we are making sure that the contractor is putting in what has been specified, what has been required to put in, what has been approved in the submittals, what has been approved in the changes. So we are that between the two. We are not reviewing the submittals. We see the submittals after they've been approved, and we go, okay, when they're hanging drywall, yep, this is the USG brand that they're supposed to have. It's 5/8 inch thick. That's the stuff we're doing that the architect would do when he's on site, but he's not on site.
Wouldn't they be kind of afraid that if they put up 2 months or a month worth of, 29 days worth of drywall, and the architect shows up and says, that's not what I spec'd? I mean, I get what.
Yeah,
I don't
that
know.
goes back to the
I don't-
contractor.
Because he's still going to be the one who's saying, that's not what's in the book.
Or it could be painted and taped already by the time he gets to it.
I would hope not the whole building in 1 month.
Or, but I mean, yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, we're there to act on the owner's behalf to make sure that they are getting what they paid for.
Not that that isn't a valuable function. I'm just trying to, not that that's not an extremely valuable function and an important one. I'm just trying to wrap my head around which funds go to who,
Yeah.
and whose job is it to do that?
Yeah, we're
And-
both doing parallel jobs, but not the same job.
Well, that's my point, is the parallelness is, do we have to buy them both? That's what
Well,
I'm thinking.
Well, and I think in
You
this
would increase
case, in this case, and it's an extension of staff. And so what staff is telling you is that this is not a function that we normally do, and so we're augmenting our staff capabilities with this contract.
I get that. I'm just, again, is it their job or is it the architect's job? And how do we take this amount of funds and give it to him and to him, or do we pay them both? I'm just trying to wrap my head around well, part of it is because the budget, I don't know where the 100,000 or 150 came from first, or the approval for that, and now we're over double that, so.
So what the staff report did is estimate what, if we brought them on right now,
Okay.
what we would anticipate through the end of the year. The total contract is over several years because
Okay.
it's through the warranty period.
So the 150 was not a whole budget, it was just
A portion of.
12 months, 12 months.
Yes, probably a over calculation of what would get us through the end of this year. So. Right, right. And that's an estimate of, not all those hours may be utilized, so. But again, over the course of the entire construction design process and then through the warranty period.
Can I make one more comment in regards to paying both or who? You can always hire the architect to be on site 24 hours a week. You're going to pay somebody. You're not going to be able to eliminate one or the other, I don't believe, to get you what you need. But you would have to pay somebody, whether it's an employee or the architect, because I'm assuming their agreement is maybe every other week on site during construction. That's what I would guess, because looking at what our contracts are when we have projects.
You're the architect, you're only there once a month?
It depends on what our.
Somebody better hire another architect.
Councilmember Fancher?
So my struggle is the same as David's, and just from experience, not in construction, but being around development. And my biggest concern is I don't know that we have anybody capable of doing the review and watching it. It's still, I mean, they're telling us we don't. And that has me concerned.
Sure.
But I also get exactly what you say. I happen to have a brother-in-law that is an architect and does a lot of state work, and know that they have more than one rate too. They have the rate to do a design, and then they have their rate it comes with supervision. Because I know, like in his case, he goes sometimes weekly to jobs because that's part of the pay scale, and I'm assuming that's a higher, well, I know it's a higher rate. So I'm with you. What's the big number? What are we looking at here as a total? I guess what I would say, what's the total? Yours is 2.6%. It was easy math. I do math a lot. But what's the total supervision cost? We don't know what this architect, is there a standard rate? I don't think so, by the way.
I'm doing a calculation real quick. They estimated. Their estimate was 10% of the project, so a $15 million project. Yeah. And what's typical for design and construction management is 8 to 15%.
So the total supervision, right, I mean, supervision is 12.6, 10 for the architect, and 2.6.
That was for the, the formal design, construction documents, bidding, and construction administration was the 1.6.
So that
For
is 10%, which is the design included in that, correct? So, but you're asking for supervision specifically, so we know that a portion of that 10% is the design. 10% is pretty standard for a fee for an architect. So a portion of that 10%, it may be in line with this entity's 2.5% or something like that. You could basically figure that's about what it's gonna be. So really, we're talking, you know, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000.
Do you have additional comment?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I mean, if you look at the project we did for the Civic Center, or the Rec Center, rather, so that project was completed, when did that start?
Started in 2020. The bid went out spring of 2020.
2020, and then when is the police station going to be finished? By 2025? Okay. So we're going to spend between those two projects, because you were at what for that project, 270,000?
Yes.
And then what are we at for this project? Another roughly 300,000 or 400,000 almost, 389. So, you know, that's my rough math is $700,000 for 5 years worth of work, which they're really only telling me they're doing roughly 25 to 3,000 hours for the two projects. We could have hired another building inspector that we could then use for all of the growth that we're experiencing in this city, and we could have hired that person for this duration, I guarantee you, for a lot less than the 600 and some thousand dollars we're gonna spend. At any rate, I'm willing to make a motion that we go with the original $150,000, and that's what we budget for this.
So just a clarification. So within the $389,000 budget, there are special inspections that are under their contract. And so $60,000 of that work were special inspections that are required for the project.
Right, but the original budgeted amount, I believe, is $150,000. Is that correct?
No, the $150,000 was an estimate of getting us through this year. So it's a piece of the $389,000.
It wasn't the total budget.
Right.
Holy cow. Okay, well, then we better get a lot done in this year.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
I understand that we don't have the expertise on the staff, and I appreciate your honesty in that. And if you do pull from whatever the two departments to try and do this ourselves, is there a cost estimate there as to what that would cost us when we're pulling them from their day-to-day work to do something they don't know how to do? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way either.
Well, first of all, I would talk about the process that we go through to even get somebody hired. It's taking us months to get people hired currently. And so the way that we are quickly delivering projects is through contracting out some of that work, especially when it's short-term. So
just a clarifying, just one more. He had a motion on the table. Due to lack of second, that motion has died? Okay, just clarifying. Deputy Mayor Martinez.
I was going to ask. I can't remember.
So to try to answer your first question there, so with working with DOH Associates on the Larson Rec Center, there was two things that were going on there. Larry was in the office, and he was my sounding board. He was also helping us to make sure, everything that the contractor was asking for changes and all that kind of stuff, verifying in the architectural contract and documents and all of that everything was justified. And the other part was, we had Kent was our eyes and ears on the site. He was there every week, verifying materials that were going in and checking all of that. Could we have somebody, could we have a city employee that could do that? Yes, Kent was very valuable in the fact that he had worked in building construction for decades. He wasn't somebody that didn't know how building systems go together. And I've been honest, our inspectors, the people that we have in engineering right now, we know sewer, we know water, we know roads, we know storm, but we don't know how a building goes together. It's just not something that we have expertise for. Do we have in the building department? We have building inspectors that, work on a lot of residential and some commercial and some bigger buildings. Do they have the same level of experience with these types of structures that DOH has in building, hospitals and schools and civic buildings and all that kind of stuff? I don't know that we have the experience. Could we learn it? But it would take a lot of time to gain the expertise that we've been afforded with DOH and Associates in the short term. How long would it take to get somebody on staff? How long would it take to get somebody familiar with all of these types of projects? I can't answer that question. Would it be less to have a full-time employee on staff to do that work? Probably, but I don't know that we would be able to have the same level of confidence and knowledge that we can, I guess, pay a premium for in the short term for these projects that are few and far between for the city.
Well, and right now, in terms of bringing on inspectors, salary and benefits, over the course of 3 years, you're there. You're at this contract amount.
So I have a follow-up. Since City Council has made it a priority to try and make sure that the permitting process is not lengthened, that development gets to kind of do their thing in a quicker way, would pulling people from those departments have any effect on building and development and all of the priority that the City Council has voiced? Would that contradict our priority if we made city staff do this oversight job?
If we were trying to do it with existing staff today, absolutely it would be an impact. We are right now we just got approval to hire another inspector because right now I know Jason Grubb, our inspection manager, he's personally working 5 different construction sites, subdivisions right now, trying to keep track of it all. And we've got, most of our inspectors are overseeing multiple jobs. And so in order to pull one of them to be on site for the police department, every day would definitely impact, how we're overseeing all of those other projects. You want to have, when pipes going in the ground, you want to have eyes there to make sure it goes in the ground right. when you're covering walls with sheetrock, or you want to be able to have the eyes there day to day. And so absolutely it would impact. So we would have to find somebody that had the knowledge and expertise, or get them trained. And where working with an entity like this, they have decades of experience that they are able to bring to bear on these projects. Again, we do pay a premium for that, but it is, what do we feel we need long-term? And how many more of these buildings are we going to build? I don't know. That's up to this council and possibly future councils of how often we have these. But in the past 20 years that I've been working with the city, we built 3 of them. So.
Councilmember Scogin?
Here comes the horse again. I think that hours of supervision are probably valid and important. I'm still back to, if the can we get out of $1.6 million fee? Is there some takeaway from that can say, can fund part of this? Because most people don't have to do it. And if we have these guys, overseeing and making sure, the right materials are put in, the architect doesn't have to do that then. They know what the spec book is, they can read, and as far as the expertise I don't think you'd find that expertise in one person to hire anyway. I mean, there's all sorts of trades and things involved, and you're not going to get somebody trained up in a year to deal with all those different things that they can do. But I'm wondering, is there in that management fund, have we already signed an agreement with the percentages and all that stuff?
So the contracts that we have with these consultants, there are estimates, not to exceed numbers based upon an agreed upon rate schedule, so hourly wages. And so they give us an estimate saying we estimate it's going to take, what did you say, 2,600 hours or something?
2,912 hours
Okay,
is what I've got.
and that's the agreed upon not to exceed number. So if over the course of the project it goes nice and smooth and they only bill us 2,300 hours, that's all we pay. If we get to 2,900 hours, then they have to come back to us and say, hey, we're getting close to our number of hours. So what do you want to do? Do we want to agree to an extension of those hours, bump up the not to exceed number, or when we get to $2,900, if we don't want to go beyond that, then we're done. So, and that's how it works with the architect, that's how it works with these guys. It's not a cut and dried number, they have to bill, they have to justify and bill their hours to us for the project. So again, like he was saying, if we're paying $1.6 million, and that is all of their hours for their design, all of their the mechanical engineers design, the structural engineers design, all of that is wrapped into their fee. If we were to do a construction management portion of that was much more extensive, then those hours would have to be billed as well.
Councilmember Schwartz?
Yeah, I think I'm probably just struggling with the same concept that Councilmember Skog is. I mean, I was just involved with the project where a gentleman built a 54,000 square foot building in Moses Lake, an industrial facility, which I assume is a more complex construction than this building will be. And he didn't have a general contractor even, let alone a construction manager or any of these people. And he did that successfully on his own. He had never built a building before in his life. So he spent $0 on any of that, and the building stands, and he relied on our building department to go in there and inspect the building and sign off on it, and it hasn't fallen down, and so on and so forth. So if there's an entity in our community that can build a building that big with zero oversight, with great success, it's a struggle for me to understand we're paying that amount of money for this oversight And also, it's a little bit troubling to understand that, you know, the implication is our own inspectors don't have the capabilities of inspecting a building like this. I mean, plans and specs are pretty easy to read for anybody who has any level of knowledge about this industry. And it's pretty easy to go through and read, you know, you need a 3/4 inch insulated throat set screw connector for your EMT. I know where to get that, and I don't have a college degree. So that's kind of the struggle that I'm having with all of this, that it just seems grossly inflated. And, you know, we're going into, it looks like a recession, and so money is going to get tighter. And so I just don't think we should be spending money in these amounts without some serious consideration.
One of the things that I would mention in this case is we are building a facility with taxpayer dollars. We're not building a private project on private ground. We not only have a responsibility to our taxpayers, we have a responsibility to the state auditors, we have a responsibility to the state local program to whom we are borrowing money. And the review, the value engineering, those are all very critical factors to be able to go back to the people that we represent and say that we've used your dollars judiciously. And tonight you've had here examples of where having this oversight for the project has saved us dollars through minimizing change orders. And so when we're utilizing taxpayer dollars, and we are responsible not just to ourselves, we're responsible to the state and those who are investing in state bond funds that are supporting our project, we have to be able to specify the review and the diligence with which we've approached the project.
Right, I understand all of that, but at some point, what you're saying is it's of paramount importance to watch out for the amount of money we're spending on the behalf of the taxpayers. Is that correct? Okay. Thank you.
And my question, you were also responsible in making sure that the construction timeline was followed, in catching some of the potential issues before they happened. You kept that timeline up.
We observed the timeline with to make sure that something doesn't have to be done twice or redone is what part of our duties are.
And did you have any of those moments with the rec center?
We had some where we had some conduit that was installed incorrectly and they had to reinstall the conduit underground versus where they had it placed. We had some ductwork that was being installed that was too low for the ceiling heights that were needed that had to be raised. There was instances like that that come to mind.
Councilmember Madewell?
So mine is back a little ways. When you have the amount of money that's budgeted and required, I would prefer, having listened to everyone, that it's explained a little bit better, because I read it the same way that you were at. We had budgeted $150,000, but now you wanted this amount of money. So, and in listening, it's over 3 years of the life of the contract, okay, or the construction. But how it's written here to me is very misleading. And I just be real frank.
Yeah, I will apologize for that. I had an additional staff report for your February 14th meeting that was not included. And so I thought both staff reports were going to be included, and that staff report on February 14th identified the length of term for the project and that this portion only addressed this year's increment.
Okay. Yeah, I just, like I said, I looked at this too, and I'm thinking, wow, 150,000, and now you want this amount of money, and it's like, oh my goodness. And so then I'm thinking, okay, so what can you take away from this list to bring it down? So that was my thinking as well. So thank you for explaining, and maybe we can do something a little bit different with this.
Councilmember Fancher?
So I think we're all on the same page. It's all about money, obviously, and we have a lot of heavy lifts that are coming ahead of us. And I've been one that is always proponent that if we get it done. I don't want to, is this, if we hire this, are we going to expedite other stuff quicker? Because we have time. I mean, I know you can't answer that, but this is just a comment from me, and I don't want an answer, because I don't want you to make a promise you can't keep. But I believe all of our inspectors are still going to have to inspect, correct? These guys aren't inspectors.
So, yes, on the job site for the building, they are our inspector for the job. So the only thing that on the Larson Rec Center that we inspected were the water and sewer services, and also looking at some of the other infrastructure outside of the building envelope. But it's everything in the building, that's.
So our building inspector's not going to go out there?
No. Our building inspectors go out there to do their required inspections.
So they're still working on the job?
Yeah, but they do the same inspections that they do for the private.
Right.
You know, they come out when they're called to look at required elements. But they're not there looking at the day-to-day installations of different items, you know, our building, you know, and he's also there when there's questions that come up and other things that happen. He's there to inform us and also to, you know, that's not what the building inspectors are there for. They're there to go and verify that it meets the code, the building code for that particular element, and then they sign off and then they go on to their next job.
So I have one history question. I don't know if anybody's, maybe Richard and Catherine probably. The last time that we had not inspected a building in the private sector, I might be wrong, meaning that we had to have somebody hired to do it, was that REC? Do you have any idea?
I do not know that.
Probably nobody can remember that long ago. So the reason I ask is what kind of expectation, if it was out of our expertise level, we had to hire a consultant or somebody else to do the inspections, because that's not, we've actually offered that up. What type of monies are we talking on stuff like that? I mean, you're not licensed to do the inspection or not, you can't be the inspector, correct?
May I interject a little bit? So there are code-required inspections above and beyond what the building department does.
Right.
And that is required, that is included in our scope.
Yeah, we have an outside consultant that would do the special inspection testing that's required by the IBC, the International Building Code, that is included in ours to have them as an agreement under us. So, yeah, it's part of our number.
Welding inspections and some other, you know, sometimes special fastener inspection.
Concrete testing.
Yep, all of that kind of stuff.
And this is above and beyond what the building department would be.
And I'll throw in, just from the billing perspective, that our folks only have certain inspections that they're required to do, and everything that's been said is correct. We would still require special inspections be conducted that we just don't do. And so whether or not it's this company or another one, that somebody's going to have to do those special inspections. If you're going to go down that path of saying we want to hire somebody in-house to do that, it would take an entirely different skill set than our guys. They do great work, but we'd have to pay a premium and get them to come here and have those skill sets. And then the other thing is they're not able to be there on site every single day. There's so many other projects, and maybe even if you hired somebody to just, that's all they did was that one project for sure. But I mean, look at it like you're going to build a brand new house, and it's a big investment. It's $4,000 or 4,000 square feet. You know, it's a little bit bigger than your standard home. You might be really interested as the owner to make sure, you might be out there on site all the time, kind of nitpicking, you know, waiting for the inspectors to come one day and making sure the contractors are doing their work correctly, because you're the one paying for it. You're going to live in it. So it's the same thing. We're just trying to do that representation for the city as a whole. And so whether you do it with hiring some special person that's willing to come here as an employee, where we have to pay them more than a regular building inspector, you can do that. And we have a couple of inspectors that all they do is residential. It's our guys, the building official and the deputy building official, that do the commercial. And then they have to get different certifications. And so our deputy building official, he's got almost every certification you could want after over 3 decades in the industry. But to have him go out and do those inspections, he still doesn't do all those special inspections. He doesn't do the welding, he doesn't do those things. And he's relying on the reports given from those special inspectors. And then they go out, like I said, there's certain stages that we have to sign off on from the building department before they can move on to the next stage. And it's relying on everybody collaborating together, the owner's rep, the architect, to work with the contractor who's, you know, they're all different. Their ability to deliver is always different. You know, you try to hire the best you can, but just somebody to have oversight, a team working together. So that's just, I've been listening to all of this, and that's just one small piece of it from our point of view if we were to hire somebody in our department.
Councilmember Skog?
Back to who pays for what. We have an agreement with the architect for a standard 10% fee.
Yes.
Okay. And I thought at one time we were talking about doing a facility that had already been built. Yes, no, there.
Kevin.
Chief?
So let's go back to that. So we are using plans or the concept of plans from a building that was built in Post Falls in 2003. It's 20 years old, okay? We like the floor plan, we like the layout, we're using that. We've given the architect the blueprints, but those blueprints he's gonna have to redo because it's a 20-year-old building. Our footprint's actually gonna be a little bit bigger. The upstairs is gonna be a little bit bigger because the building that Post Falls built is a little smaller. So it's, yeah, and the building codes have changed.
The same
changed in
architect?
20 years. No. The architect that did Post Falls is in Idaho. Our architect's in Seattle. So we just gave him the plans as a concept to build off of. So he's still having to redesign everything, redraw everything, and re-engineer everything. We just gave him the blueprints as a concept on the building that we want to build.
So that, yeah, so typically, so then there was no savings in.
Yeah, there's not going to be any savings. Again, when I gave him the blueprint roll, it's from 2003. I mean, just building codes alone, you know, all that structural stuff has changed in 20 years, so.
Well, and I guess I hope it's exactly what we want, because I thought we were going to save money by doing something that had already been, that's the way I thought it was presented.
The layout will be almost identical, except a little bigger. But we're using just the floor plan and the concept more than anything else. So it may look similar, but it's not, you can't use 20-year-old plans to build a building, so.
Staff is looking for direction. At this time, I would accept a motion.
I move to approve the DOH contract as presented.
And I'll second it. Do we have any other discussion, even though I think we've beat this horse for a while? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
No.
Let's do a roll call vote on that one.
Thank you, Member Myers. Councilmember Eck.
Nay.
Councilmember Skog.
Nay.
Councilmember Madewell.
Nay.
Councilmember Schwartz.
Nay.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
Councilmember Fancher.
Nay.
And Mayor Myers.
Aye.
Motion fails.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
So moving forward, this means that city staff will be pulled to do a job that they don't have expertise in. Is that what just happened?
There could be an amended motion, if anybody would, or another motion if they would, somebody so chooses to.
I didn't understand Jenna's question.
She's just wondering if this is dead at this point. But there can be another motion made on this item if somebody wants to make a motion that's a little bit different, that fits what their needs may be. I know the whole conflict has been over the design phase.
I'd
If
like to
maybe
move a
we
motion.
can compromise a little bit and move on with the owner's rep past the design phase.
I'd like to move a motion that we consider hiring the contractor for the construction phase.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Don't we have to have an architect? I mean, we have to design first before we hire a contractor, though.
We have an architect at this point, right?
So
Yeah,
we
but
have the architect on board, so we would, so to be clear, it would remove schematic design, design development, and construction documents and bring them in for the bidding and construction administration?
Is there a cost value to that?
Yeah, it's in there.
Cost savings.
It's about $31,000 difference in the value. $10,360 for each of those phases is what's budgeted.
We have a motion and a second.
We do have a motion and a second at this time. Is there any other discussion?
I think the big deal, it's all about this, it's not, the need's there, it's the supervision. It's the double, to me, it's the double dipping in the supervision between the architect fee and this. I mean, I don't know, we've already signed this contract with an architect, and I guess not knowing that they were, what the expectation of management, their management. I mean, I look to my expertise that are in construction up here, and I know you guys do different parts of it, but I know David has done some very, very large state jobs, and go Cougs. But anyway, there's different levels of that. I think that's where the struggle is I think none of us, we all know the value of having somebody watch the money. That isn't it. It just seems like this is one, I think what the struggle has been, there's a $1.9 million number here for two people. Architect and the eyes. And I agree, it's 12.6% of the job. That's a pretty hefty to me. I mean, I guess I would love to know what is the architect, what is their number for supervision? Can we get that breakout?
Absolutely. We can bring that back.
I think it would help us understand what we're paying for. This is 2.6%. It was pretty easy.
Can I say something? And part of those architects' fees are most likely civil design,
right?
Structural engineering, mechanical engineering, plumbing, HVAC, fire sprinkler, electrical. Those are all the components that are under the architect, not just his service. So that's spread between.
I get all that. Like I say, I mean, good thing my brother-in-law's not here. He's an architect for a lot of state jobs, and I kind of know the gig, and I know there's a fair amount of money in there for management of a job.
So from our experience, I know when we put a project together, we have a set fee. It might be around 8%. About 24 to 26% of that is in construction administration. The other 2%, from 8 to 10%, is likely civil engineers, landscape architects, other people that aren't the structural and mechanical folks. So if maybe you're looking at a quarter of 8% or something like that.
Councilmember Swartz?
Excuse me. How many proposals did we get for this portion of the job?
For the owner's rep portion, this was a sole source contract. So sole source, owner's rep. So we talked to the DOH Associates.
And so do we plan to sole source the contractors too? Or,
That's not allowed.
right, okay.
Deputy Mayor Martinez?
I understand, or the concern about the double dipping or the, double cost, however you want to use, whatever words you want to use. But I still go back to city council priorities and the lack of expertise on our staff and how we have made it a priority of our city staff to continue business moving at a good pace. And we can't ask them to do one thing and then make a decision that completely contradicts what we've not only asked, but have directed them to do. So, if we had more time and we had that magic person somewhere that existed that we could get here, which everybody is having issues with hiring in these particular areas or fields of expertise. That doesn't exist right now. If we're delaying construction or extending construction, is there an increased cost to that as well? So that's why I feel strongly that we need to do this.
Can I offer something?
Sure.
So I think I understand that the question is, we're not understanding what exactly, we've signed a contract with the architect. And I think council wants to understand exactly what we signed a contract for them to do. How much supervision is baked into that contract. And I can pull the contract language, and I'm willing to, highlight those areas that we talked about tonight. And would you want me to, I can send that to the city manager and she can disseminate it to the council to inform you exactly what their contract says. And if, whether or not we feel that it meets our needs for their level of supervision over the project. Is that okay? Would that be valuable? Okay.
We still do have a motion in a second unless those are pulled. We can, go ahead.
In what time frame would that occur?
It's Tuesday. I'll get that to the city manager before the end of the week.
Okay. And then we could talk about it at our next city council meeting? Does that delay anything of what is occurring now with the project?
No.
All right, then I will, can I amend my
I have a question for the,
Yeah, go ahead.
Catherine, in that we've already voted on the motion.
We haven't voted.
Well, no, not the first one that we've already voted on. I understand it, but we voted on the first one. Is it possible to now table the discussion completely until we get this information?
Absolutely. A motion to table can be made, but you do have a motion and second on the floor.
And they can remove those, right?
Which can be removed at the motion maker and second's
With
request.
the first motion that we had 5 nays and 6 and 2 yays, even then, can we table it? Even though we did that?
Yes.
So I would like to move that we table the
Wait,
motion.
you gotta pull the, you gotta pull.
Can't. All right. I'm sorry, Deanna.
Yep, thank you. I'd like to, can I amend my motion or remove, withdraw my motion, my emotion? At this point, it is emotional. I'd like to withdraw my motion and move a new motion to bring this up at the next city council meeting after Richard Law has provided our city manager the requested information regarding what we're getting from the architect, including supervision, most specifically the supervision part. Am I getting that right? Okay.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to table this item until the next meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Value engineering. Could you come up with a 0.5%?
I don't know if I can commit to anything until I see what I'm seeing.
Okay.
And we'll
In
look
your-
on the other
In
end.
your experience, having been on both sides of the equation, are those kind of things possible?
There's a possibility in getting value for changing construction types and doing things, yes. Which would have to be agreed upon by the architect and,
But I mean, if this product was specified and you could look at that and go, that was, we don't need stainless steel marine grade doors locks on the bathrooms. We could use this other model that, hey, it's, instead of a $600 lock set, it's a $300 lock set times 100. I mean, are there things that could you look at the plans and the specifications with those kind of eyes?
those would be some of the items we would be looking towards.
Mayor Myers, can I just ask a real quick question? Would it be valuable for us to have our building official or deputy building official attend the next meeting and speak to their role in the process of this type of project?
Absolutely.
Yes. Can I also add one more thing? Sorry. What would it cost to hire somebody with the expertise to do that job and not use current city staff?
We will get you more information.
Thank you.
It is 9 o'clock. Are there any students in the audience that need their paper signed? Please come on up and you can, city staff can sign.
Recording stopped.
If anybody needs to take a break, maybe we take a short 5-minute recess. Come back at 9:10.
Well, I wanted to, I'd like to request financiers, because if you come and assess my house, that's fine. The property's mine. An assessment up there, all it is the building's mine, the rock's yours. So the value of my building is considerably less, because at any moment, you give enough notice, I have to move it. So yes, someone assesses it and says it only does it every 6 years. But the building, the improvements are mine, they're not the city's. I think we're concerned about the rapid bringing it up in line. I don't know that it's more than 30 years ago. There's no record. We don't have any. But how do we I've only been, Tom Dennis is very good about setting up state grants to meet our airport's requirements. So get out of here, Dave.
We will resume our regular session, but we will be going into an executive session for 15 minutes to discuss potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110, parentheses 1, subsections I, and we'll resume after that.
Recording stopped.
They still have 2 ends after this.
Recording in progress.
We are now back from executive session. No decisions made, no votes taken. We can now move on to item number 3, the municipal airport lease rates. And this will be presented by Rich Huebner, our Assistant City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening to you. Good evening, council members. So just, I'm going to do some procedural history for the council of how we got to where we are this evening. In 2021, the City Council authorized the Airport Commission to retain outside counsel to assist in the development of a new lease template. The document that was then approved for recommendation by the Airport Commission and forwarded to the city staff for review and ultimately potentially to bring to council made some changes to the annual lease in regards to the annual lease increase as well as insurance requirements. And it was those changes that led staff to do a review of pertinent state law to determine if you as the city council had the ability to approve some of those terms that the Airport Commission was recommending. So specifically, staff reviewed RCW 1408-120, which relates to the specific powers of municipalities operating airports. So subsection 1H in that document, or excuse me, in that law, details that a city operating an airport can only make airport property available for purchase or lease at a rate less than fair market value under very limited conditions. So if you, as a city council, wanted to offer land for lease at less than fair market value, there were very limited conditions under which you could do it. Those are then broken out in that subsection and its subsequent subsection I. So subsection H states that in order to offer land at below fair market value, a municipality must adopt a policy that establishes that such lease or contract enhances the public acceptance of the airport and serves the airport's business interest, that's one, and must adopt procedures for the approval of such lease or contract. So that's subsection H. Immediately subsequent is subsection I, which states that if a city elects to adopt that policy that I just described, the city must find that a set of 13 conditions are met. All 13 have to be met in order to adopt such a policy. Of those conditions, there were 2 that were primarily an issue for us as staff to take a look at. Subsection I3 states that the desired community use and the community goodwill that would be generated by such use serves the business interest of the airport in ways that can be articulated and demonstrated. So we heard from Commission President Richardson earlier that we were looking at a report that the airport has that details economic impact of the airport to the city, and had been looking at that as a potential opportunity for the Airport Commission to request below market rates on their leases. However, subsection 3 then becomes an issue because what that report does is detail the economic impact that the airport provides to the community. It does not articulate a benefit to the airport's business operations to continue to offer below market rates. So it does the opposite of what it needed to do pursuant to subsection 3. Subsection 10 then states that such lease or other contract for community use is not to a for-profit organization or for the benefit of private individuals. So even if subsection 3 didn't apply and we could potentially do that, it could not be offered again to individuals or for-profit businesses. So there was really only one tenant of the airport, the Mosquito District, that could even potentially benefit from below market rates as they're a government entity. So recognizing, after reviewing that RCW, recognizing the need to determine if the city's current lease rates reflected fair market value, at your January 24th meeting, staff recommended and you as council authorized a market rate analysis. I then, subsequent to your approval, I contacted 20 airports across the state that we have regular contact information for and received 8 responses. One facility from that 8 was deemed not comparable as it charges a flat rate plus excise tax for a property lease. It's a flat rate, it's the excise tax, it's not a per square footage rate. So it was not a comparable in terms of how us and most of the aviation industry sets their lease rates. There was an 8th airport that was part of the responses that at the recommendation of the Airport Commission, we removed them from the comparable set because they are a regional commercial airport. So not a small municipal airport. I would mention, however, that the costs that they provided were right smack in the middle of the comparable set. So removing them did not have a substantial impact on the averages that came from that comparable set. So real quickly, the 6 that responded, the city of Brewster, they charged 17.5 cents for aviation-related activities and 24.2 cents for non-aviation related. They were the only one of the 6 in the comparable set that even had 2 different rates, and that'll come up in a moment. Chewelah was 21 cents, Cle Elum 20.4 cents, Colville 14 cents, Othello 25 cents, and Tonasket 9 cents. I will mention at this point, Othello is a port district-operated airport, so not a municipal, but when you look at that airport as comparable for physical size and the types of operations that operate through that airport, we felt that it was a comparable in terms of activity and general use as Moses Lake. So in reviewing the responses, staff recognized 2 primary points. No other airport currently offers separate commercial and non-commercial rates as we do here in Moses Lake. It was Yakima also did. Again, we removed them, but of the responses that we got, the only 2 that offered 2 different rates were aviation related and non-aviation related. And it's important to know our city code, 1835, it states right in there that the purpose of the airport is to maintain, with very limited exceptions, the municipal airport will continue to be used in a manner compatible with general aviation, airport, and aircraft operations. So it didn't make sense for us to look at aviation-related and non-aviation-related rates, as our code very specifically says the purpose of our airport is to be aviation-related. So, as I mentioned those rates a second ago, for comparison, Moses Lake currently charges 7.59 cents per square foot for commercial leases and 13.92 cents per square foot for non-commercial leases. I've already gone through the 8 that responded, the 6 that were considered in the comparable set. So I'm going to jump through my notes here really quick. So the recommended motion before you this evening is to enact a new lease rate of 21 cents per square foot. This figure is the average of the 17.8 cent aviation-related rate and 24.2 cent non-aviation related rate that came from the market analysis. So those 2 figures were averages of their specific purpose, and then I averaged the averages to come up with the 21 cents that is recommended to you this evening. If enacted, the 21 cents per square foot would go into effect January 1, 2024. So how will this impact our current leaseholders? The overall lease rate would increase, the overall lease revenue would increase from approximately $33,000 in 2023 to approximately $81,000 in 2024. That would go a long way towards stabilizing the airport budget, which relied on an allocation from the general fund when the Airport Commission was established in 2022. On a more granular basis, how will that impact individuals? The average size of a lease that is currently classified as commercial is approximately 28,000 square feet. Under our current, under the proposed rate, the annual lease of a similarly sized current lease would rise from approximately $2,200 per year to approximately $6,000 per year. The average size of a lease currently classified as non-commercial is 2,400 square feet. Under the proposed rate, the annual lease of a similarly sized current lease would rise from approximately $720 per year to approximately $1,100 per year. So a couple concluding points to my report this evening. First, it was conveyed to me by the Airport Commission. I reported to them in their next meeting after January 24th that we were doing this market analysis and why. It was conveyed to us the importance of doing an apples-to-apples comparison with other municipal airports, that specifically municipal airports that do ground-only leases. Commission President Richardson mentioned earlier the limited number of municipal airports in general in the state. So I just want to mention, if council chooses to table the item and direct me to solicit additional responses, I am more than happy to do that work. I will just add that it's likely there would only be a minimal number of additional airports that meet both of those criteria. So I doubt that the numbers would fluctuate too much, but I am happy to do that work if council directs. Finally, I just want to emphasize that the proposed action this evening is really to bring the city into compliance with state law. This is in no way city staff or you as council, if you approve the recommendation, in no way any of us as city representatives saying, hey, we can do this. It truly is us as a city saying, we must do this in order to follow state law. So Mr. Mayor, that concludes my report on this item, and I am available for any questions.
Councilmember Swartz?
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I understand you used a methodology and one that, I could scrutinize, but.
Sure.
So some of this is subjective, it seems, or at least there's some cutout in the law that, basically tells a municipality or an airport commission or whatever to come up with a methodology. Is that accurate?
That would be accurate. The RCW specifically says that we must offer land at fair market value. To your point, you could scrutinize the methodology that I used. I'm not an appraiser, so I did the best that I knew how. But the RCW does not specify this is how you come up with the fair market rate. It just has to be a fair market rate.
Okay, and based on all of that, we're not having a negotiation here, but because we can't, that's not how this works. We have to come up with some methodology to get the number. It's not just what everybody feels like. At the same time, you threw out a number that was low of around 9 cents a foot, I believe.
That was one from the city of Tonasket. So it was the one outlier in the comparable set.
And I appreciate that. But again, somebody who spends $2,200 a year now and may spend $6,000 in the near future probably would ask that you weigh Tonasket's rate a little more heavily than the other rates, but just because of where we are today.
Yeah.
So,
To your point, Councilmember, I would just mention, as you said, we could certainly scrutinize the way I did that. The question I would have is Tonasket market value? So to your point, I just mentioned that.
Exactly, and we're just having a conversation. I'm not scrutinizing you whatsoever, but
No worries.
it's just for illustrative purposes here.
Absolutely.
So, I think what the motion that was made earlier tonight was to possibly table this, I believe, to get some more data, and somebody suggested 60 days or something like this. That's probably, there may be another methodology that's acceptable that doesn't provide such a sticker shock to everybody, or maybe there's a way that there's an incremental increase. Just because I believe that the rates haven't changed for roughly 35 years or something, or, there's not been some substantial change. So it's not, to go from that to this that's pretty hard to swallow for a lot of people, I'm sure. So I would be for some consideration, but at the same time, I think the language of the lease needs to be looked at pretty carefully, just to make sure that we as a city aren't putting ourselves at risk, and that what we're saying we offer as an amenity that can be leased is used for what we expect it to be used for. And that nobody's making some rather egregious amount of money by, say, subletting the property to somebody else. So I don't know what legal sorts of language we can put in there to sort of put some guideposts around that. I agree that this airport is a great asset to the community here, and those people who use it enjoy it immensely. I understand that, but I hope that they're using it strictly for the purposes of enjoying flying, and so that's where I am with it.
Councilmember Scogg?
I'm a little confused on the rate increases. I've written down one was at 0.7 cents, and then raising that to 21 cents.
So, thank you, Councilmember. So the current, the current rates as we have them, there's commercial and non-commercial.
Okay.
So I want to make sure I have it correctly, and my mind just went blank. The current commercial rate is 7.59 cents, and the current non-commercial rate is 13.92. And the recommendation is to do away with two different rates and establish one rate at 21 cents.
Okay, so the commercial is tripling, and the non-commercial is a 1.5.
Sure, yep.
Okay. Of the people out there, what percentage of those, what percentage of it is commercial? I mean, if we take the mosquito district out, because they're not emotional, it is what it is for them.
Currently, so the 2023, I gave you an approximate number a minute ago, and I apologize, I'm going to throw out specific numbers. The current total lease revenue projected for 2023 is $32,983.26. So that's that approximately $33,000 I mentioned. Of that, $25,566.69, so let's call it $26,000, is commercial.
Okay.
And the remaining, let's call it $7,500, is non-commercial.
Okay. So the 1.5 is really only affecting $7,000.
Correct.
Okay. And so though that average at 2,400 square feet, that personal use bill and this proposal might go from
$720 to $1,100 per year.
Okay, so they're, okay. That seems rather insignificant, but the commercial people are those people who are actively doing business and flying planes and hauling people and spraying bugs and stuff like that?
That would be the general assumption, for lack of a better term. Yeah, for example, there's Jackson Flight Center. I have several others that are listed as commercial, but they primarily are listed under an individual's name rather than name of business, other than the mosquito district. But there are several that are listed as commercial and should be operating businesses that are aviation related.
Councilmember Fancher?
So just real quick, you had two rates that you landed in between. You said 17.178 was aviation related, correct?
It was 17.5, or, no, I'm sorry. Aviation related, the average was 17.8. Yes, sir.
Right, and then you had non-aviation related.
24.2.
I guess that's one, I think I go back to different methodology. We don't have do we not, I thought we're not supposed to have non-aviation related.
Correct.
So I think we.
Within the MLMC, there are very, very few exceptions to that, but as a general practice, general rule, what you just said is correct. We're
I
not
think we
supposed to
should
have
just utilize
non-aviation related.
aviation related for our market. I mean, I'm just one person, but I do market analysis for a living. So I think we're trying to do comparables to comparables, and I think if we're going to be aviation related, I mean, that is one thing we need to look at is keep it aviation related. However, I would still be concerned, I'm not going to go out and inspect them all, but I hope, since there's subletting allowed, that we're getting those sublets reviewed to make sure they are aviation related.
So if we were to follow the Councilmember Fancher's suggestion, which would be 17.8 cents, just for council, and there's an error in my formula somewhere, so I can't give you the breakdown. Actually, yes, I can. Sorry, I was just able to fix that. So the commercial collection would be, oh, no. I put in 17.8, not .178. That's what was screwing me up. So the total collection for the year would be $69,442.60. Of that, just under 60,000 would be commercial, and just slightly over 9,000 would be non-commercial. Under current classification.
And again, I don't know the difference, but it looks like you had a hard time finding somebody that had different rates for aviation related.
Out of the 8 that responded, 2 of them had non-aviation related rates, and one of them was removed as a non-comparable because it was a regional commercial airport.
Right. But I mean, I think you were having a hard time finding anything that was, I guess,
non-aviation.
had a separate rate when it was
At all.
related to aviation regarding commercial and non-commercial. So I think we could, I mean, I don't know.
Mr. Fancher, are you finished with your? Yeah, go ahead. Just need your name and city residence.
I've been associated with this airport for 20-plus years. I want you to be sure to understand that that commercial rate was for...
Just your name and address.
Oh, Richard Pierce, 4214 West Lake Shore, Moses Lake. The commercial rate is for the lot. So people want to do a commercial operation, they rent a whole lot, put a building on it and do their commercial lot, tie airplanes down outside, et cetera, et cetera. The private people rent the footprint of the hangar plus 50% for movement area outside the hangar. That's why we started out with the 2 different rates, because we're renting different portions of the property. For example, that lot I'm on has 3 hangars on it, and they pay the private rate for 3 hangars on 1 lot, which makes more revenue than it would be just renting the lot to a commercial operator. And we've designated certain lots for commercial and certain ones for private hangars. But I want you to be sure to know that that's what the difference was for the rate. The second thing I want you to know is that if you want a new method, go out and survey what Grant County charges for open space. It's about 5 cents a square foot. So you could use that for a method. Don't have to go to all those other airports. Say the airport in our community, major airport, rents property cheaper than we rented at municipal. And you could lower that rate. I just hate, I want our airport to have enough money to operate. All of us do. But a rate increase like this in 1 year is just too much, especially for the commercial operators. It's just too much for them to continue their business the way they've been doing it, increase their prices to their customers, et cetera, et cetera. It's too much. And I'll bet you if you would use a method of just asking Grant County and then say, we want to be comparable to Grant County, that's who our competition is. Tenasket isn't our competition. People aren't going to put their airplanes down at Tenasket. They're not going to do it. But they might put it down at Grant County for a lot less money. So that's where I think your method needs to go. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond? Is that, I apologize, I don't want to Bigfoot whoever had the floor. I just do have a response if that's when it's appropriate.
So the Airport Commission directed you or asked you to do an apples-to-apples comparison. Is the Grant County Airport an apples-to-apples comparison?
You read my mind, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. The Airport Commission specifically, as you said, asked for an apples-to-apples comparison. And also, when I reported who the comparable set was to the Airport Commission, requested that we remove Yakima as a large regional airport. Granted, that's commercial, which we don't have in Moses Lake, but I would suggest that Yakima is a much better comparison to Grant County International, and Grant County International not being a comparison to the municipal airport. I would also just mention really quick, the numbers that I've given you this evening, we retained the commercial, non-commercial methodology, even though we're recommending one universal rate. So current non-commercial leaseholders would still only pay on the footprint of their building. So that has not changed.
Councilmember Swartz?
Yeah, I think that you actually answered my question as far as because I know we were talking about ground lease rates, and that's what I thought we were discussing here. But if I'm understanding correctly, that the city is currently the owner of some of the buildings out there, is that accurate?
The leases are specifically the ground. The individuals or organizations that build the hangar own the building.
Okay, I get the distinction now.
Yep.
Thank you. And then at the Port of Moses Lake, are there other fees for using that airport besides just the rental fee? So if you take off on that runway?
So if your aircraft is under 12,500 pounds, there's no landing fees at Grant County. There is a $75 every 2-year badging fee. To get through the gates, you have to go through a class. But besides that, there's not any additional fees. And just, I'd like to say that I feel like we go the extra mile to make sure that there is no non-aviation related business going on out at the airport. Hangar space is at a premium. If we had 5 hangars built tomorrow, I could have them full within a week. So we make sure that every hangar out there has some aviation involved in it.
Councilmember Fancher?
So, we still have a problem, income. I mean, so we use 5 cents a square foot, now we go down in income.
I don't think as a commission, we've ever thought of a rate decrease.
No, I know, but you see where I'm getting.
No, yes, absolutely. We understand. We're caught here.
Mm-hmm.
We need more income. It's very hard to develop out there at the rates we've been at. And we've had 2 hangars built in the last 15 years that I've been out there. And those were built in the last 12 months. Mm-hmm. So it's been very hard to get people to develop out there. Grant County will offer them a much better deal when you start talking about building hangars. So it's hard to compete with that. We do have some benefits, I feel, being at the municipal, but some people just, economics plays the biggest role in all of this. So I don't think we've ever, I appreciate Richard's comments, and Richard is part of our commission, but as a commission, we have never discussed decreasing, and we're not against an increase. What we're very concerned about is tripling our rates for those of us that have commercial operations out there. We really are all getting hit from all sides, just as the city is with all budget items. We're trying to minimize in all the expenditures that we possibly can, and we would certainly be in favor of some incremented increase, but the tripling in 1 year is pretty tough for all of us. And just, I kind of wanted to rebut your appraisal value thing. My house, when I pay it off, is mostly mine until I don't pay my taxes. But so no one can come in and tell me in 90 days I'm shutting you down. Disassemble your house and move it.
And that is part of the lease language. With every building out there that's not city-owned, which I believe there's 3 buildings that are city-owned right now, the Operations Center and then Tom Dent's old buildings where we're trying to put the fueling system. But everything else out there is privately owned, and the lease, and the lease terms currently say you can give us 30 days notice, we remove our buildings, or you'll take them down and send us a bill for it. So the value there, I feel like my building's worth less because of that, because of the financing, and that was the big thing in developing the new leases, was so people could go to the bank, because you had a 20-year commitment that then a bank would potentially loan you some money.
My assumption is all of these municipal airports have very similar language regarding removal of buildings and stuff.
But most of them don't have a clause that allows them to shut the airport down in 30 days.
Right. And I get all that, and we do need to reflect that. I agree. I will tell you this, from a guy that's in real estate doing land leases and stuff like that, this is unquestioned territory of what land's worth, I mean, it's really, really low. I mean,
And I don't think
from
that
that standpoint is all I'm saying, and I look at these numbers for all those other airports, same thing. I mean, so there's always factors that's going into each one of those airports. And I believe the Port of Moses Lake is similar. And I will tell you, I have had the same situation with the Port of Moses Lake, in just real estate related. They unfortunately can compete at an unfair advantage a lot of times that the average public can't compete at. And they got a pretty nice asset when they took that on. And so I hear you, and like I said, I already said, I don't think we should use this higher rate, from my standpoint. But on the same token, we got to figure out how to pay the bills out there also. Yep. And for the benefit of the community and for you guys. And so we're trying to get to a fair market value that it's hopefully operating better. So.
Councilmember Scogg?
It does seem to me like we're in a rock and a hard spot with wanting to make improvements. I mean, if we said it was 2 cents a foot, do whatever you want, get your own funds, would that work?
Not in compliance with RCW, sir.
Well, I mean, just as far as economics go, I mean, if we want stuff done, it seems like there's really not much wiggle room. If there's a budget and you want to do that kind of stuff, let's figure out, then those who use that can pay the budget. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine too. But
And I don't think it's as simple as saying dropping the lease rate is going to spur development out there, because there's other pieces of the lease that are not conducive to most people developing out there. The short term, and actually I think it's 90 days, they give you 30 days, and then you have 60 days to remove your building if they decide to close the airport down. That is, a bank just kind of laughs when you say, I want to borrow $50,000 to build a hangar, which is about what a 40 by 60 hangar costs to build. So part of the lease was getting a 20-year term, so that is very helpful when you go to the bank. If both of those, I mean, I can't speak for the general public, it would be much more palatable, but it also means we would not make any more money, or we would make way less money doing that, and I don't think we're for that. But as Richard said, some lots, we get 3 tenants on the same lot, and we maximize the value in there. When someone approaches us about building a hangar, we try and minimize their footprint so that we can get as many on in the private leases as possible, to try and fill up that land and get the most revenue that we can.
It is now 10 o'clock. Can you run us through our options, since we don't typically get to this point?
So our code has a 10 o'clock stop time, our rules of procedure.
Well, the beauty of having council rules of procedure is that they are council's rules of procedure. So if council wishes to alter their rules to accommodate a particular situation, you can do that, or you can stand by your rules as you've adopted them.
If we were to adjourn, then we continue on tomorrow, or do we just push everything to the next meeting?
Next meeting.
Well, it sounds like it's been tabled by default.
Well, we can make a motion to continue.
Can I ask something, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I know I had a topic which I'm totally fine with waiting till next meeting, but I think that we also are very interested in getting the travel demand model contract potentially reviewed because it's in high need. And I think that would take them,
I can do it in 1 minute.
yeah, 1 minute.
Well, then let's make sure we get it done. So at this point, though, what do we need to do? I make a motion to extend the meeting.
Okay.
How fast did you say?
The next meeting.
In 1 minute.
So 10 minutes is going to be enough? You promise me?
Well, we need to deal with this.
I got an idea to deal with it.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
So at this point, are we going to table items
Well, just,
3 and 4?
we got to do this first.
Let's do this first. 15 minutes.
15 minutes is what they just said.
15 amended motion?
Yes, we can vote. I have a motion to extend the meeting 15 minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
I would make a motion now to table item,
We have to do it separate if we're going to do.
sorry, no, I'm
I
on the
think
one
the
wrong.
language we want to use is continue.
Correct.
Well, I think I want to not have this the next meeting because I think we want to make sure we get some lease language figured out.
Got it.
And make sure that the lease is compliant to what we're doing. Is that not right?
So if you table something, it requires a motion by the council to remove it from the table. If you just want to delay taking action, you could continue it to a future
Maybe
council meeting.
down, not the next meeting, but further
Correct.
down. Okay.
No.
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 So we're gonna, I would like to continue this agenda item, yeah, isn't that right? For a further meeting, not the next meeting, the following meeting.
April 11th.
Will that be a sufficient amount of time for everybody to try to get some additional answers?
I believe so. If not, I'll give an update on that at that meeting and ask for additional time.
And then we can make sure that RCWs and lease language and everything else, at least we're clear on that stuff.
How long, Rich, did it take you to get the 7 or 8 responses that you got from those airports?
I put out the request and gave a deadline of 2 weeks, and some of them came in right away, some of them came in on the day of the deadline. So
Perfect.
2 weeks is reasonable.
So my motion still stands.
Okay, we have a motion. We need-
Second.
And a second.
Begrudgingly, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Mayor, can I add one quick note on that?
Yep.
In that future update for council, I'll give an update on looking at potential other methodologies. If we don't come to another methodology that's acceptable to everyone, the other option is to hire an appraiser, which would have to be charged to the airport budget. So just putting that out on the table. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, that's all I have.
Item number 4, do we want to continue this one to the next meeting? We just need a motion.
I move that we continue this item number 4, Sleep Center location negotiation to the March 28th meeting. Is that reasonable?
Second.
Is that okay for city staff?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
And if anybody in the audience, I apologize. It's such a late meeting that a lot of us have work tomorrow, so. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 5.
1 minute, okay. Well, the city staff has gone out for a request for proposals for a firm to put together a travel demand model for the city of Moses Lake and the surrounding area, specifically focusing on the May Valley as being a high priority area to develop a traffic demand model. We selected Fair and Piers, and we have put together negotiated the contract language and the fee structure for a fee not to exceed $133,970. If we get approval on this, then they will begin data acquisition later this month and start working on that travel demand model. And we should have something later in the summer that we can then begin to use with developers and also with our other partner agencies, Grant County, Department of Transportation, to identify needs and solutions for the Moses Lake transportation needs. Was that a minute?
Pretty close.
It is for you.
Councilmember Eck. Councilmember Skog.
Where does this money come from?
We budgeted for several different it comes from the city budget. It's
But it is part of an already budgeted item.
correct. We budgeted, I believe the total was $500,000 for several different traffic studies and modeling earlier with the budget. So it would come out of that.
Councilmember Swartz.
Yeah, Richard, could you give us some quick background just on specifically what they're doing?
So what we're going to do is we will put together, they will go out in the community and at identified critical intersections and arterials and those types of things will gather data. There's also some other things that they can use as far as we can buy data based on people's, it's, I guess what you'd call, to us would be anonymous. So they track people's phones as they drive throughout town. So getting traffic patterns and data to be able to predict as, so we'll establish an existing model of how people are traveling today, and then we can also then plug in various demands and uses or future developments and demands and predict how it would affect our existing infrastructure, and also if we want to try out various intersection designs or a new arterial or something like that, how it may be able to help the situation.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would just point out that as far as the use of public funds for somebody to study something is concerned, this is one of the better uses of that, because we get a work product that, like Richard was saying, we can manipulate ourselves to meet our needs rather than fitting in a box that they use in every municipality in Washington. Also, I did talk to somebody who was a former employee of a Fair and Piers, excuse me, you know the name of the company.
Fair and Piers.
Fair and Piers, thank you. And she suggested that this study is one of the better ones that they offer, and that they are particularly good at this type of study. So I'm very much in favor of this. Very good job. Also getting competitive proposals on that. Thank you.
Councilmember Skog.
They will track somebody's cell phone with them knowing it?
It's already happening.
Everybody's being tracked. So this is that big data, and so yes, they can. That will be
And then
part
the
of it.
chief's going to get his cameras. And you're going to get people's cell phones.
We're going to get some data. Well, I'm not getting anybody's cell phone.
It's
I'm just
it's
asking.
anonymized data. You just get it, this car traveled this distance at this speed. It doesn't
And
tell
you believe that?
It doesn't tell you David Scott was speeding today.
This item is up for a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Administrative reports.
Chief Fuhr put a item on the dais about the police citizen academies. You've got it.
All I ask is that you please take this to, I know many of you go to church, take it to your church and ask your pastor to give it to the congregation. We're trying to fill all 30 seats from the community, and so the more people we can get, the better off. So any contacts you have, I ask you to invite them. That's it. It's on our website. We have more at the PD. If you want a hard copy, you can go to our Facebook page and print it. We've got plenty of copies.
And then just a reminder that we have facility tours tomorrow and Friday. So. I think this week it's wastewater and public works. Yep. Noon and 3 tomorrow for wastewater. Yep, pick up in front of City Hall. And then Friday at noon is the ops building.
For anyone who was wondering, they were not today. I came down and checked, so.
Is that it? Council committee reports. We'll start with Councilmember Swartz.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Madewell.
I don't have anything.
Councilmember Fancher.
I have a 7 a.m. meeting in the morning.
Councilmember Eck.
I should probably not talk about airplanes anymore, but as it relates to the port, there are still 152 737 MAXs, and the probability of the MAX being out there for probably 3 or 4 more years at this point. Number two, in August, we're going to have the Army out there doing their big military exercise for 3 to 5 days. And a really neat thing for, once again, us aviators, the port is talking in April with Minot Air Force Base about the possibility of an exercise with the B-52 over here, a couple of B-52s over here. And there's more stuff that I can share with you, but I can't at the moment that's going on. So it is really neat what's happening up at the port. We'll forget the municipal airport at this point. All right, thank you.
So do we get to go out there when the B-52's coming in?
I'm sorry, what?
Do we get to go out there when the B-52's coming in, or any of those things going on?
I would imagine if you talk to our friends at Millionaire, that might be a possibility, yes. It's really exciting what's happening on that side.
Councilmember Skog.
I have nothing to share.
Deputy Mayor Martinez.
Our upcoming Watershed Council meeting will actually be at the Vanguard Academy, because apparently they have some school projects that are focused on conservation, so that'll be very interesting to attend. As far as the Council Finance Committee, besides the wonderful good news of increased revenues, there will be some budget amendments coming forward regarding some community events for us to consider, like the summer concert series. So looking forward to that. That's it.
The only thing I have is on GTA's next meeting is the 16th, but it will be at 10 a.m. It is our board retreat. Start planning for the year and budget and all that good stuff. So it is open to the public. It will be at the Larson Recreation Center. Anything else for the good of the order? Next regular council meeting is March 28th at 6:30. Meeting is adjourned.